Hello and welcome to Rewind Reviews. This week we are taking a look at Jurassic Park 3. To speedrun the opening.
Alan!
Go on.
No, I was just saying Alan.
Oh, you were saying Alan. I thought you were like starting a sentence. I was like, oh no, we're off to the tangent races already. I thought that was early. No, I was gonna say. That we usually do history at the start of this podcast, but we can sort of speedrun that this week because my history of this film is when it came out, I watched it. And if you want my more extensive history on Jurassic Park in general, you can go back to the first one. But the long and short of it is, it's a Jurassic Park movie. Of course I liked it as a kid. I was aware, as I was when I watched the second one, that it was not as good as the first. But I still enjoyed dinosaur action. So,
yeah.
You know,
well, that's
enough for a kid sometimes, isn't it? Doesn't matter if the story makes sense.
I think so. Well, in that case, Dan, let's go straight into it, right?
Yes, please.
Because I'm going to do it. I'm going to say it.
Go on.
I'm going to be potentially controversial.
Yep.
I'm going to make the internet groan. I think this is a better movie than the second movie.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought that. I've been thinking about that since yesterday, since seeing it. It's broken in different ways, which makes it really hard to judge. Because I think both movies are very flawed, but they're flawed in different ways. And I guess what this might come down to is which flaws bother you personally more. I don't mean you as in you, Chris. I mean you, just the royal one. The you, the viewer.
Thing, right? Here's the thing. I think not in immediate history, but in recent history, it is marred by the Alan meme, which is stupid, obviously.
Yeah.
But that 2-second awful decision. No, don't get me wrong here. Bear with me. The movie makes a lot of awful decisions.
Yes, it does.
It is fairly dull. It is nowhere near as magical. There's still some dumb stuff. A fair bit of dumb stuff. I say some because I think comparatively the second one is dumber.
Yes.
Its biggest crime is probably that it is meh. It is not in any way, like I say, magical, particularly exciting. There is no single sequence that is as entertaining as, well, obviously as entertaining as a lot of the first film. But if the question is it better than the second? There is no single sequence that is as entertaining as the truck sequence or the dinosaurs attacking camp.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the dinosaur attacks, a lot of the sort of scenes, a lot of the setup of the scene and the choreography of the scenes are similar, one scene to the next.
Yes.
So you're probably thinking, well, then why the fuck do you think it's a better movie, Chris? But it's clearer. There's an ABC. It's not as convoluted. I don't think there's anything in here, as whilst there is nothing as exciting as the truck sequence, there is also nothing as dumb as the gymnastics kick. I'm sorry, the Alan thing is a dream, is a random joke. It's a bad joke. It is a bad joke. So's the weird bit where the dinosaur comes up and is going to attack them, but seemingly sniffs the poo and walks away as a result. I don't even know what that is.
I can explain that. I think.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I look forward to that because I was like, is that dinosaur vegetarian?
Well, it's pretty quick actually. Basically, they've found the droppings of the Spinosaurus, which is like the biggest predator. So that creature has seen them, gone to eat them, sniffed the reasonably fresh, it seems, droppings of the Spinosaurus, and has gone, oh fuck, now I'm not hanging around here. That thing's about that, which is what predators do. You do find in real wildlife situations. I've seen enough Attenborough documentaries to know that the smells, the pees and poos of the various predators actually keep their prey from living in their environments, in their zones. They often have to venture out of where they live to hunt, because the animals are smart enough to smell them coming through their various droppings. So that I think the joke there is simply that it was a, I say joke. The idea is that it was afraid of the Spinosaurus, so it ran away.
Okay, fair. I That's fair. I think take a moment in the movie to explain that for the dum-dums. Maybe have Alan Grant say it.
Yeah, I think that would have been helpful. I agree with that. I agree with that statement.
But as bad as those two moments are, and again, I'm not saying there's not dumb shit in this movie. I'm saying for me, there's nothing dumber than the gymnastics kick. That was ridiculous. And I know people are going to be like, the dinosaur says hello. Yeah, the dinosaur says hello in a 2-second dream sequence. It doesn't affect the plot. It's not used to get them out of a situation. For me, that's less offensive. And the characters is tricky because part of the problem is the second movie has such a great cast, such a brilliant cast. But as we talked about, the characters break themselves scene to scene, depending on what it needs them to do, from a behavioural paleontologist just behaving really stupidly. Eddie's brilliant, hashtag justice for Eddie, but good old Toby Ziegler. But, I think if those characters were played by less well-known actors, I don't know. I just think the characters are better constructed. The journey that the other two characters go on in this movie, in terms of over the course of the movie realizing they do love each other, whilst it's dumb, the contrivances and the plot. I'm not saying it's a good movie. This is me very specifically talking about, is it better than the second movie? I think the characters go on a bit more of an arc in this movie, and whilst maybe less entertaining. That is interesting. And I think the big one is we spent, I would say, 40%, 35%, more than time spent talking about anything else. Last episode on The Lost World, we talked about the huge Act 4 problem that The Lost World has. And we talked about that complaint for a while. It was the largest complaint we had, and it dominated the podcast. Whilst there's not necessarily too much to say about this movie, and it may be a bit boring, there is nothing that is going to make us complain for 40 minutes. There is nothing as structurally breaking as that fourth act is in The Lost World. And if there's not as much to complain about, for me personally, I go, it's probably better. Now, as you said, I think it's very key to point out, I don't think this is clean cut. I think this is absolutely personal. Because if someone wanted to make the argument, you can't say if there's nothing to complain about on that level, it's a better movie, but then also admit that there's nothing to complement it as much as the truck sequence and the camp attack in Lost World. And that's absolutely fair enough. That you could absolutely make the argument that someone would rather watch a movie that's going to entertain you in bursts than sort of placate you for the whole thing. And I get that, and I think that's fair. But for me personally, I think this is certainly a better constructed film. Probably not as entertaining, but I'd still rather watch this one again in 6 months, I think, if you said, right, and then again, Ian Malcolm is a more... But he's not the same Ian Malcolm. No, I think I would pick this one again. And also, it's a lot shorter. Nice. A swift hour and a half. Yes, please. I landed personally on Jurassic Park 3 is better. But I fully accept it's personal, and I would fully accept if someone was to rage and disagree with me, because you could make an argument that the second one is more entertaining.
Mm.
And you could probably make an argument that the characters are better. My argument of there's more of a journey for the characters might not matter to some. What do you think, Dan? I ranted there. I apologise. Give me your thoughts.
No, I mean, if I apologised every time I ranted for several minutes on the podcast, I don't think we'd have a podcast. The podcast would just have to have a subsequent podcast where I apologise for all the ranting I do. There'd be like a little.
Well, I remember.
What's the Walking Dead? Where it was like after the Walking Dead, where it was like Chris Hardwick presented a little after show. It'd be that, but for this podcast, it'd be talking yes. Rewind.
Well,
where it'd be just me apologising for all of my ranting.
Well, I remember at my wedding, you stood up and you apologised for ranting on all our podcast, and it was quite a big apology, quite a big public apology, and I think you said that it was worth about 7 years of apology. So you got another few years on that bad boy. Don't worry about it.
I don't remember that, but I'm sure that's right. That sounds right. Sounds correct.
I don't think we've ever talked about this. Let's have a slight tangent here. Dad didn't do that. Obviously, that was a bad joke. But what Dad did do is put an insane amount of pressure on my speech and get me in my own head about it by very amusingly going round to every table and taking a sweepstake as to how long I'd talk for, which really got in my head and made me nervous that I was going to ramble and talk for too long.
Also, that was all. This is all at your dad's instruction, right? You're aware of this. We've spoken about this.
No, I couldn't remember that detail, though.
Yeah, no, this is all at your dad's instruction. Because he also asked me when I went round from table to table to tell people to, when you said, there was a certain thing he knew you were going to talk about, and when you did, we were all supposed to go, and bang on the table. Which
Can you remember what the thing was?
I can't remember, no, but when you did it, the whole room did, and you were confused and surprised. Because every table seemed to be coordinated in this choice, and that was unfortunately my doing. But again, at your dad's instructions, I'm not doing that without your dad nudging me. To be honest.
To be fair, I think in the end it worked out because my speech was quite succinct, and I think that benefited the day.
Maybe.
And also, I had some ground to make up. Best man. Speech long.
Was long.
I doubt he's listening to this, but I'm just joking. Was a bit long. No, I'm joking.
It's a little bit long, but that's okay. I mean, a speech could be long on a wedding day. I don't think anyone's. I think long also is on a wedding day is like relative to the other speeches. So like if everyone else's speech is like, I'm just gonna say a time. I don't know what the actual time is, but let's just say everyone else's speech was 5 and his was only 6. It's still gonna feel long comparatively to everyone's. So you sort of
told you,
there's nothing you can do because you've pre-written a speech. So unless you write a speech with cuttable bits that you can adjust on the fly, should everyone else's speeches be a bit quicker, then you're kind of fucked. So
Yeah. I last one. Did I think I've told you before. Did I tell you about the father of the bride speech that my cousin saw at a wedding? That was phenomenal.
You did. I think you also told it on this podcast as well.
Oh, okay, never mind then. We'll comment on YouTube if you didn't hear that and want to hear it.
Yeah, I'll do it on a future episode.
Dan, Lost World, Jurassic Park versus Jurassic Park 3. Alan Returns. Yeah. Tell us which one you prefer.
Yeah. Look, I don't know where I come down on the one versus the other just yet, but I feel like by the end of this podcast I might have an answer. But let me lay it out this way for you. It does not make the mistakes the second movie makes, because the plot is coherent and the characters and dialogue are functional. The problem is that this movie doesn't understand tension at all. It jumps... Sorry, I'm really, really heavily distracted. There's a huge amount of noise from Chris's end, and I have no idea what it is. Okay, he's not on the mic. He nipped up to wash his hands. Literally, all I could hear was like... and I was like, I cannot concentrate with that noise. All right, it stopped. Okay, fair enough.
Apologies.
That's back. Okay. That's fine. So the problem is that the movie doesn't seem to understand tension and how to build it. And it doesn't... in two ways. It doesn't understand how to build tension scene to scene, in that all the scenes, it sort of goes too big. It creates a scary and deadly situation, so scary and so deadly that you go, well, then they're going to have to do something ridiculous to get them out of this. Like, being surrounded by 4 raptors in the first movie is you're a dead man. There's no getting out of that. And then the gas thing is like, I don't know if the raptors would give a shit that much about gas. You know what I mean? Like, I find that hard to buy. Or, the Spinosaurus with the phone inside it when it's just like right there, which is one of my favourite shots in the whole movie. It's a very funny gag with a great payoff. But then the actual scene starts where they're being chased by it, and I'm like, that thing is huge, and its running speed is going to be way faster than theirs. It's going to be on them in 2 seconds. Oh, there's a convenient hole in the fence. Perfect. Okay, fine. So because the movie keeps cheaping out on scenes of tension with like horrible solutions to those scenes of tension, you stop buying into the tension because you're like, well, the movie's just going to Deus Ex fucking whatever its way out of this situation because that's what it's done every other time. But that's actually not the bigger problem. That's just sort of like a bad action movie problem. The bigger issue for me is that the movie doesn't understand how to pace its set pieces. I'm going to pull a weird comparison here, and I'm going to talk briefly about the Paranormal Activity movies. And for those of you who are like, what the fuck? I promise, just bear with me. This will make sense. The Paranormal Activity movies need to be studied for how perfectly they escalate a situation. First night, someone's shoes have been moved. It's weird. I guess we're going to try and set up a camera because we'll sort of see what's happening with these shoes or whatever. Next night, maybe the shoes haven't moved, but something else is slightly more harder to explain has happened. Now we're a little nervous. Oh, it's silly. Maybe we got a ghost, you know. And it ticks up and it ticks up and it ticks up, and then the last 10 minutes of any Paranormal Activity movie are like madness. Like all bets are off. We can commit to the bit. There are people being dragged through doors. There's murders happening. There's all sorts of chaos, right? Whatever's happening, it's happening. And at that point, you've it's like a roller coaster. You've gone up and up and up really slowly, building and building and building, and that's the tension release, the big drop. Now, a Jurassic Park movie doesn't work in exactly the same way because you tend to want the big drop about, I don't know, halfway through the movie, and then from there it's just the downward, the roller coaster getting faster and faster. So it doesn't happen in the exact same point of the movie as it does in a Paranormal Activity movie, but that still applies. The first Jurassic Park movie, we get to the island, we're looking around, the tension is building, things are starting to go wrong, but the guys are out there enjoying the park, and it gets more and more worrying as more and more things get wrong, culminating in the T-Rex being free. And then we're all just on the road from there. The second movie does the same thing. They get to the island, and at first it's, oh, the Stegosaurus, and it's, oh, that's pretty dangerous. And then it's like, oh, these guys are catching these things. That's worrying. We could be disturbing the balance of nature here. And again, it escalates and escalates until the T-Rex attack on the RVs, and then we're just away, right? This movie, like 18 minutes in, the Spinosaurus is eating people, and it's in full view of the camera, and there's no attempt to build up to it, and then they crash into it with a plane, and I'm like, where do you go from here? You've gone too big too soon, movie, and now you have nowhere to go that's going to excite me, because it can only be downhill. Like, you can only be down. You've started your roller coaster at the end. That's a terrible choice. And I just structurally, like, I could not get my head round such a fucking bafflingly poor decision. Because what's great is this movie has an inbuilt way to do that they're there, and it doesn't seem completely dangerous to start with. If they get there, and they're all like, we're on a rescue mission, Alan Grant's like, well, I want to get the fuck out of here because it's dangerous. Like, oh, don't be silly. Look at this thing. And, you know, there's like a Stegosaurus or something majestic that's, you know, a herbivore and isn't interested in them. And he's like, no, but we really need to get out of here. And then the movie builds the tension because he knows it's all about to go wrong, and they don't. And they continue searching for a bit, and then we escalate from there. Something dangerous but handleable by the goons. And then people start to get a tiny bit worried, and then it gets worse and worse and worse, and we build up to Spinosaurus, right? And then we have a big reveal of Spinosaurus. Not just it's there, by the way. If that's your big thing of the movie, don't just make it be there. Build up to that. Build to that, you fucking idiots. So that's such a horrendous choice for the movie's tension. Is this movie more coherent than the second one in its A to B to C? Yeah, mostly. But that's pretty unfucking forgivable to me, to start your roller coaster at the end. I really don't know what they were thinking with the way they built the tension and executed that in this movie. So it doesn't work scene to scene, and it doesn't work across the entire movie. It's an absolute shit show. And that doesn't even get me started on my not so much nitpick corner, but just fucking moaning corner when we talk about the ending. Because fuck the ending of this movie, top to bottom. Fuck it up its backside.
Yeah.
It's a dreadful ending.
Oh, yeah,
it's one of the worst endings a movie we've reviewed on this podcast has. It's just like... It's like the writer comes on screen and goes, hi, guys, we're about to end the movie now because we're bored.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it does quite literally feel like that. I don't know. This isn't me defending. This is me hypothesizing because I don't think it is. It is a defense to everything you've just said.
Mm-hmm.
But do you think, in terms of the roller coaster, do you think their thinking was, or is it possible their thinking was, people have seen 2 of these, they know it's a slow build tension. There's no tension because people know it's dinosaurs. So let's just fucking give them the dinosaurs right away.
That might have been the thinking, but that's incorrect because there's a difference between giving us the dinosaurs and ruining your movie's tension. Like, we can still have dinosaur action early in the movie. You just bring it a little down. You just bring it to a point where you have somewhere to go up from, and that's all it would have taken. You know, if the first thing they'd come across was a sort of person-sized dinosaur that was dangerous but handleable with those 2 goons with the giant guns. You know what I mean? Like, and then it's like, yeah, see, Alan, it's not so bad. We took that one out. And he's like, yeah, and that's the small one, though. You know what I mean? Like, there's worse things on this island, and that's, you know, where we build from. But like, oh Christ, it's crazy to me. And also just the lack of building up the Spinosaur. If you're saying to me we're replacing the T-Rex in this movie with a more dangerous, slightly bigger T-Rex with a big long face and a fin on its back, I'm like, okay, I'm in. Like, sure, let's set up a new apex predator. And you're like, and we're gonna have it beat a T-Rex in the movie. I'm like, genius, do that. That's really good. But the first movie knew enough to show me what it looked like. Slowly reveal the foot, reveal this, reveal that. Don't just have it like be there, like, hi. Because the movie doesn't even really tell me I'm supposed to be extra scared of this one until a little bit later on when it fights a T-Rex and it beats it. And even then, none of the characters go, oh my God, it beat the T-Rex. Like, I'm just supposed to understand that it beat a T-Rex. Like,
and if I'm honest, that's a problem for me because, and look, hands up, maybe I'm a fucking idiot. Like, I get that. Maybe I'm a fucking idiot. But dinosaurs have never been my jam. So the moment I found out there was a new Predator Apex in this movie was just a second ago when you told me. Like, because and again, maybe I'm a moron. Fine, I accept that. But also, as you've said, no one at any point goes, fucking hell, that's this. Did you see it just fight a T-Rex? Oh my God, what?
Right.
So, or look at that. It's got really different, like, it doesn't have any of that. Whereas the first Jurassic Park explains the dinosaurs quite a bit. Whereas, therefore, in this movie, to me, it was just, well, it's just an army of dinosaurs now. Like, yeah. And the movie didn't make me feel, and again, maybe I'm just an idiot and someone's like, you must have some fucking base level of dinosaurs. No. Pterodactyl. If the dinosaurs were the Zord names in Mighty Morphing Power Rangers, I've heard of those dinosaurs. Otherwise, that's it. Otherwise, T-Rex is the big fella. And maybe I'm a fucking idiot for that. But the movie also doesn't take the time to signpost and tell me as an idiot what I'm looking at and why it matters in terms of the dinosaurs.
Yeah, so big dino nerds knew that even before there was even a trailer that this movie was introducing a new dinosaur, because if you actually look at the logo for this one, it has, instead of a T-Rex skeleton on the logo, it's got the elongated nose of the Spinosaurus, which looks more like an alligator than it does a T-Rex. And viewers clocked this when they announced the movie with a logo, to the point actually where, like, there's a line in the movie that's in the movie just to sort of observe that, because, like, so where is the line? I can't find it. Basically, there's a line in the movie where, one second, let me just see if I can find this, because otherwise I'm just gonna repeat it in Triv anyway. I might as well get it out of the way now. But basically, there's a line in the movie where he's like, oh, it could be, I saw the elongated nose, it could be this dinosaur, or it could be that dinosaur. And actually, that was them literally quoting the message boards that had been debating the elongated nose of the dinosaur in the logo that they'd released. And they just took that line and put it in the movie. Which is kind of amazing. But yeah, it's supposed to be the big new dinosaur. and they don't introduce it properly. No one treats it any differently. It's just there, and it's kind of insane. Like, I'm on board with the premise of having a big, new, scary, even bigger dinosaur. So a slightly bigger dinosaur with a big spine on his back and a long nose, and he kills a T-Rex in like the first act of the movie. Like, I'm okay with all of that, but actually, like, do it, like, use it properly.
Yeah, completely, and signpost it for idiots as well.
Yeah, it's real bad. Like, so it's hard for me. That is a pretty big fuck up for me.
But do you think where do you stand on? Do you agree that they need to signpost it for people like me?
No, that's what I'm saying. No,
that's an unobservant idiot.
No, that's exactly what I'm saying they should be doing. Because even, okay, here's the thing, Chris. Even if they don't have a character, do they think of, that's Spinosaurus, it's an even bigger predator than the T-Rex. Let's say we don't want to put that line in someone's mouth. Okay, fine. If the thing shows up, right? If they turn up and there's immediately, let's say the first thing they encounter isn't the Spinosaurus, it's the T-Rex, right? And that's the thing that kills the first guy and the plane crashes into, and it's about to kill them, and then an even bigger dinosaur with a big spine on its back comes and kills the T-Rex and then turns to look at them and they run. That's it. They've done it. You already know as an audience member, Chris, whether you know what a Spinosaurus is or not, that something bigger and scarier has turned up. And, like, you could even do it by having a shot where the spine is the first thing that comes into frame, like up into frame as it rises from behind a bush. Like, bit of visual cinema storytelling, bit of cinematic language. And then even people who don't know one dinosaur from another go, well, this is a different dinosaur, and it looks a bit bigger, and it's just killed the T-Rex. And that's it. You've done it. You've done it without actually even saying it. I mean, it would help. I'm all for having a character afterwards be like, we've got 2 paleontologists on this team. Go, did you see that? That was the Spinosaurus. And then someone's like, what's that? And then they can explain it. That's fine. I have that too. I'm all for that also. Really spell it out for viewers. But at least use visual language to tell me that's what's happening first, rather than doing it this way. Absolutely insane. Bananas.
Yeah, I think all of this links into what I said earlier about how the problem is, and I think it is partly because they start the roller coaster at the end. The dinosaur choreography, for lack of a better term, begins to look the same and feel the same. It feels incredibly repetitive, and I don't think it's because we've watched 3 of these movies close together. I think it's because how many times does does it feel like Alan is surrounded by dinosaurs in this movie? Mm-hmm. Like, or they're being chased by a dinosaur in this movie. Yeah. Like, it just feels very samey. And, like, the first Jurassic Park, for example, went to real effort to make each of those dinosaur attacks a different type of attack.
Yeah, different situation. Whereas this is just, like, they're either climbing down something or they're trying to get through something, but there's also a goal to every scene, like, almost. Like, she's getting to the switches or she's getting out of the build. Like, there's always something that they're trying to do as well, which gives it an extra tension because there's an achievable goal mixed in.
Yeah. Let's talk about the central premise, because that is pretty dumb.
Yes.
So he gets Alan agrees to go, but then gets kidnapped into landing. And then it turns out the people that he's gone with don't have money. They're just the parents of a boy who's got lost.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Well, it's weird because, I mean, honestly, Chris, like, why do that bit? Like, yeah. Couldn't they just appeal to him as a like, you don't want to go on this island. Our son is lost on this island, and no one is willing to help. I believe that Alan Grant might choose to go back to this island for that.
Can you imagine, right? The first, and you don't even need to do too much different to what you've currently got. You just need to tweak, right? Can you imagine? Right, movie starts. Alan's there. Ellie's there. There's a kid. Alan's bonding with the kid. The entire first movie is Alan coming round to the idea of having children. We open the movie. Alan and Ellie have got a kid. It's not his kid. Ellie's with someone else, right? We'll maybe come back to discuss that as a decision, by the way.
Yeah.
And I know I've said this before. I might force our hand with it. But I know I've said it before, right, with X-Men, but there's a lot of fucking X-Men films. I would like to continue momentum, and if I can, personally, if not even just for the podcast, watch the next 3 of these movies, because there's only 3,
yes.
right? Oh, I suppose technically 4 probably, but I'll wait for that to fucking come on some sort of demand service. I'm not going to the cinema to see Rebirth. But listen, I'll plant my flag now and predict right now that when those 2 characters return, they either are together or they get together. Because my assumption is fans didn't like the fact that they were no longer together. And my other assumption is that if you were bringing all those characters back, you would feel like you needed to play to the nostalgia of it. And I'll tell you now, those characters are going to be together when they come back in the Jurassic World movie. And you know what, Dan? Fuck it. Turn away. Maybe you're going to... Because it's not a huge one. Obviously, turn away if you don't want to know. But I'm quite happy to have that spoiled for me. Am I correct in that assumption, Dan?
So if you've not seen Jurassic World Dominion, skip ahead 30 seconds. Yes. I'll just say yes. I won't tell you whether it's they are back together or they get back together, but yes. So that you're correct. But we were talking about how we get into the island. So
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So So
I have thoughts on that
so
too.
imagine...
But let's keep it on track. Island.
Yeah. So Alan's whole first movie. Alan has kids. Second movie, he's bonding with a kid. It turns out he's not his kid. He walks away. He's sad, Alan. He's not happy about the fact that they're not together. He's not happy about the fact that it's not his kid. Because he spent the entire first movie learning that he wanted kids. And now the woman he loves has one with someone else. He's downbeat. And then someone comes to him and goes, "Can you help us save our kid?" Fuck it, of course he's doing it. Come on!
Yeah.
Like, I don't think you need, like you said, I basically made exactly the same point as you. But what I'm saying is I think you could even do it with the components you already have.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to be tricked.
No, and I think, look, you've got to have that thing where he goes, "No, that's insane. The kid's probably already dead." And then you just you could, you know, he had a satellite phone with him. We had a blip from it, but it's gone dead. Like, so we think he's alive. Like, just, you know, whatever you want. That's the sort of thing that's a small detail you can sort of contrive. Because obviously that would be the biggest barrier, is Alan just being like, well, that kid's been there for 8 weeks. He's definitely already dead. which is a fair point, truthfully. People don't survive on these islands very long. But either way, there are ways to simplify this. And let me tell you, Chris, this was the simplified version. We'll come back to it. But when they were scripting this movie, there was a more complicated reason or version of events that got Alan to this island, involving a testimony to the US government to try and get the island back off Costa Rican control. And he wants to open a research center on the island, and he has to get the rights to that. But then he needs the money to do that also. So he's got 2 things to do. He needs to like go and help the kid for the money to start his research, but he also needs to turn up to testify in front of the Senate hearing to help get America win control of the island, and then they'll give him the sole rights to do. He has to do both of these things in the movie, and it's a nightmare. It doesn't sound good. It sounds bad, but we'll come back to that. So in terms of getting onto the island, it is needlessly convoluted. I don't completely hate it, like the idea that he's been tricked, because I also understand that a director might look at this and feel like, I don't know why this guy goes back to the island. I don't know how we can compellingly convince an audience that he's going to put himself through this again, more so than even Malcolm. And we spent a lot of that previous movie, having him bitch and moan about being back on the island. And we don't necessarily want to repeat that either. So, like, I sort of see how they got to where they got. There's better ways to do it, in my opinion, but it's just my opinion. In terms of Alan...
Yeah, because I really didn't like... We'll give the blank check. We'll give you as much money as you like for your research, because that's how fucking Hammond got him to the island, and it didn't work out the first time.
Yeah, no, I agree. It is too repetitive of the first. For sure. But it's a sequel. I guess sequels will do the thing that the first one did, like sometimes, and that's okay. If it's a compelling enough reason, it's a compelling enough reason, I guess. But I will say this movie does a lot more at the beginning to establish, how out of time the research is, like how how little money they've got left, because they have that scene where where Billy, I think it's Billy, his little sidekick, is like, he says, "Look, we got 4 weeks of digging left, Billy. Let's not worry about it." And Billy's like, "I had to buy some equipment. We've got 3." And it's like that. Even that's only one exchange. It does it drives home how serious the money thing is more than the first one. In the second one, it just feels like Hammond's like, "I'm going to sponsor your hobby," whereas in this one, I don't know why it feels more like they're offering to save his livelihood. I do love, however, the notion in this movie that they had a really great idea in the beginning. It's part of Alan's motivations to not go, is that he doesn't believe these are dinosaurs in the truest sense. He believes that these are, theme park rides, theme park attractions, and that actually studying what genuine dinosaurs did is to look at what's in the ground, because the things that are on those islands only half represent genetically, or whatever percentage genetically represent dinosaurs, because obviously the DNA was spliced with frogs and other things. And this notion that he doesn't see them as worth studying does really fit with his character, and I do really like that element. And the original version of this script had him wanting to open up a research facility on the island, and that feels no. I don't believe he would want to put people in risk by living amongst these creatures, and I don't believe he would want to study them. So I will say the one thing, if this is the convoluted introduction we're getting to him getting to an island, it's certainly better than what they had in the original script, in my opinion, which is, 1, more complicated, and 2, not in line with the character at all. So yeah, that's kind of my feeling on it.
Yeah, and I think to be fair, I also like how they handle the islands. Like, I did start the film going, "Oh God, how are we gonna get there again?" And actually, that logic of, well, Site B still exists, but because of the events of the first film, it's restricted. I was like, oh, that makes sense. That's quite clean cut. That's quite simple. Yeah. I'm probably an idiot for not thinking it could be that.
Yeah, and it exists, it's restricted, and of course people are still cheating because people with money will do dumb stuff for tourism. Like, I genuinely, and people are going to get at me for this, I think, I loved Dinosaurs, the pun-based... what's the word? What do they call it when you do the? It's not jet skiing. When the boat pulls you along in Europe in the parasailing, maybe, is that the word for it? I don't know the word for it. But when you have the boat pulls you and you've got like a parachute on your back and it pulls you up. There's a name for it. I just can't remember what it is. But yeah, that. Incredible. Like, that's such a brilliant idea. I love the idea that people are just that dumb they will take those kinds of risks. And the movie opens with the guy like seeing a patrol thing and he's like, let's go, and you think it's going to be some military thing, and then it's not. It's genuinely one of the more fun scenes in the movie, well, except for the reason they unbuckle their parachute in the first place, which is fucking insane. Just got to point this out. Little hop to nitpick corner, Chris, if that's okay with you. Just it's close this week. We're still there from last week. It's literally like 2 steps. If the boat's gonna crash, well, that doesn't really affect them up in the air on the parachute. They're not in the boat, but they act like they're in the boat. They're like, release it. The boat's gonna crash. So. So, you're tied to the boat, yes, but you're nowhere near it. You will not be involved in this crash. You will feel a tug when the boat does it, but you've already felt several tugs, right? So, let's not worry about that, because what will happen is the boat will crash on those rocks, then you'll be over those rocks, not over the deadly island.
Yeah, it's just convoluted, isn't it? I agree.
Yeah,
but it's a cool shot where they look down and see the boats being destroyed.
Yeah, when we go through the cloud, when we come back out, it's like empty, and you can see like there's a blood spatter, and you just know some sort of amphibious dinosaur has like had its way. It's pretty awesome. It's a good shot. It's a good shot, even if the premise of what then happens isn't. Let's quickly move on so we can finish off the point on Ellie and Alan. I also didn't like the choice of separating them. And I even liked it less when I read the director's reasons for choosing to separate them. It's worth noting Ellie wasn't going to be in the movie originally. She ended up in the movie because of a last-minute rewrite where the guys that were rewriting it had just worked with, well, not just, but had like worked with Laura Dern and written a film with her a few years prior. And they're like, we like Laura Dern. We're going to write her back into the movie. And then she was like, I don't want to be just in one scene, like a cameo at the beginning. They're like, okay. And then Spielberg was like, what if she saves the day? And Spielberg added that to the ending as an idea. And then they wrote it in to give Laura Dern more to do. She did 1 day of shooting, I want to clarify, still.
I was going to say, I hardly think that extended Laura Dern's involvement.
No, I guess,
although
I did get the feeling, I remember reading the quote, I don't think I put it in my notes exactly as she said it, but I think she sort of phrased it as more just like, she didn't want the character to just come across like a cameo. It wasn't that she wanted more days of work, it was that she thought, if my character's in this movie, they need to do something. Be useful to the movie, like be present, not just be there as set dressing, like the 2 kids in the first movie, who are just sort of there to be like, Ian, we're still around. And then he goes off to talk to their granddad, and they're never seen again. So I guess that's what she was trying to avoid. And in truth, it is more than that. It is better than that. She is more involved in the plot than that. She watches Barney the Dinosaur, for example, which is a great bit of irony. I say she watches. It's on in her house for her child, but still. Anyway,
I was going to say the child's watching Barney.
I love the idea we'd cut back and she'd just be watching Barney the Dinosaur. Though it amuses me.
I did because I can imagine that was also because it is tricky, isn't it? Because that is a good example of the way one of the flaws with that sequence is a good example of the flaws in this movie.
Yes.
And the tension, because, in Jurassic Park, when we were having tension, when we were having dinosaurs attacking, boom, it's all about that. It's all about the dinosaurs and what's going to happen and what are people's movements and What we don't do is go, the dinosaurs are attacking and the cage is in the sea and they're getting dragged underwater. We cut back to Barney dancing and a little kid having a good time. Boom, we cut down the sea. And so I think that is a flaw in the movie. I don't think it's good writing. But again, I'm an idiot, and I was like, "Kids watching Barney." I didn't mind it. But I think it should be acknowledged as this film. It's another example of how this film cannot handle tension.
It is. I would agree. But I mean, to be fair, to be fair to the film, that is designed to be contrasting tensions, isn't it? It's supposed to be like you're supposed to feel tension with the kid, because what you're supposed to feel like is, kid, get the phone to Ellie. Ellie needs to know they're in trouble. But then you sort of go, yeah, but that's not. If Ellie does pick up the phone right this second, that still doesn't solve the problem of the dinosaur trying to eat them in the immediate now. So, you know what I mean? It's like it'd be better if So the version of that scene that they're trying to do in their heads is a version of a scene where they're in a locked room, or in a room that they're trying to lock, and there's something trying to get in, and they're on a comm unit or a phone or whatever to someone else who can do it but isn't currently present. So the tension, if the phone could just get into the hands of that person, the problem would be solved immediately. That sort of situation. That's the sort of thing they're aping here with this scene. But the reality of it is, Ellie isn't going to solve this current problem. Either way, whether they get in touch with Ellie or not, they're still going to be being attacked by the Spinosaur. So that's why it doesn't quite work. But I think in a smarter movie, that idea of they're on the phone to someone who can help them, and they've ended up getting through to their kid, and you're just waiting for the kid to give them the phone, but the kid's gotten distracted by a TV show. There's tension in that. No, kid, go. I could see that working. It just doesn't work here because none of the tension works in this movie whatsoever, top to bottom. So it doesn't function. So I just, what? But yeah, I sort of, again, like I said with some of the other scenes, I can sort of see what they're going for. I understand what the thinking was behind the choice. It just doesn't function. But let's talk generally about the choice to split up Alan and Ellie. Now, I liked this. I didn't like this at all in the movie, but I liked it less when I read why. So this is Joe Johnston, director of the movie. He said, I don't want to see them as a couple anymore. For one thing, I don't think they look like a couple. Okay. It would be uncomfortable to see them together, and Laura Dern doesn't look like she's aged for the past 15 years. Right.
Jesus.
Right. Now, look, on the one hand, lovely compliment for the very, very beautiful Laura Dern. I get that. Absolutely. Laura Dern's a very attractive lady. I'm sorry, but Sam Neill is fully ruggedly handsome man. Like, that's a good-looking man. Right? I am having no trouble imagining those two being together at all.
But also, the movie, because Joe Johnston seems... well, I don't know anything about his personal character. I only know the movies he's made. But
yeah.
I understand as a director, you've got to be strong in your views and opinions and stuff like that. But when you're making a sequel, you know the opinion of the general public because the first movie exists. So why did he not go, I don't think they look all right as a couple? Where everyone else was quite happy with them. No one had that complaint. Everyone else thought they were a viable couple. They enjoyed their story. Oh, they like those characters? Oh, okay. Well, you know what? My personal opinion that they don't look right as a couple isn't relevant then. Mm-hmm. Like that's maddening. Like, that's mad logic. Fuck that.
Yeah. Now, and I do get it, because I think what he probably could have said here, if he wanted, and it would have made a bit more sense, is there is an age gap. I just double-checked it. To be fair, it's 20 years, which is more than I thought it was. But still, there is an age gap, and I don't think it works. Okay, that's more of a valid thing than talking about how Laura Dern doesn't look like she's aged for 15 years.
There's an inherent implied Sam Neill does in that. Yeah, I didn't even think of it from that angle, but yeah, absolutely. Which is also, I will say, not true. Sam Neill looks great in this movie. No, Sam Neill looks. I nearly for some fucking hell. I nearly just went. Sam Neill looks banging. Such a strange way of phrasing it.
That is a strange way to phrase it, but I'll take it. So,
but it looks great.
So for me, I think, like, it's the old thing, right? I've never liked. I've always found it lazy when a movie puts two characters together, and then in the next sequel that those characters appear in, they're just broken up for drama, for story reasons, it always feels contrived. Holly and Thingy breaking up in between Die Hard movies, we just got them back together. From my perspective, I don't want to see them not together.
I completely agree with that as a criticism. It implies less to this movie because when that's at its worst, it's when they contrive them to be apart and then over the course of the movie gets them back together.
Right.
At least in this movie, they don't get back together.
Yeah, and I guess the idea that they're trying to sort of input to the audience that they're trying to translate to us is he's unable to evolve. We saw all of that time he spent with kids in the last movie, but it wasn't enough. He still wasn't ready to make that choice. He's still maybe, a bit in his work, because notice that she doesn't seem to be, doing paleontology as directly anymore. She's not digging up bones no more. She's like living in the suburbs. She's probably working from home, writing books or something. We don't know. I don't think we actually say what she's currently doing, but that's the impression you get from the information passed over in this movie. He's not. He's still doing what he was doing. So there's an element of the movie's trying to tell me he's refused to evolve or failed to evolve, and that's what spoiled their relationship. And there's a truth to that, and that in terms of that is a reason relationships do expire in real life. I understand that. That is why relationships fall to the dirt sometimes. I totally get that. But it just feels contrived and lazy, and it just doesn't really do anything for me. And also, I just feel like you're a little bit undoing. You're sort of saying, that character arc from the first movie didn't happen, didn't work, didn't function. And I don't like the next movie to just sort of undercut the previous one, if I'm being honest. So yeah, I don't like that. I would have preferred them to be together.
Yeah, and I think the movie absolutely could have still worked with them together. Like, again, they're together, they have a kid, this couple comes to them, she says, you can't do this, don't be so silly, and he says, I can't leave. What if it was our child? What would you want to do if it was our child? And she's like, oh, okay, go. And then the second scene she's in quite literally plays out in exactly the same way.
Yeah, the only thing I would say about that is would it make Laura Dern seem like, well, I'll stay home with the kid while you go off on the adventure? Like, would that not come across like...
You just have him insist because he's like, because someone needs to stay, someone needs to be there for their kid.
Yeah, but the fact that it's like specifically it's the woman, would that not read potentially a little sexist? Like, man, go out, do hard, difficult labor. You stay here with child. You know, I'm just speaking for like a modern audience. I could potentially see somebody feeling that way. I agree with you though. That would be a perfectly, valid solution. So yeah, I have mixed feelings on it because I do understand what they're getting at. The idea that he refused to evolve makes perfect sense and really fits with his character in so many ways. But also, I feel like we're undoing the character arc of the previous movie. So I'm very hit and miss on the way they handle it. And also, then when I read Johnston's reasons, I was like, no, nil point, not happening.
Yeah, that's mad. That's mad.
Not happening.
What do you think? Because I look, it was that's another problem with this movie. Everything is obvious.
Yeah,
everything is so obvious. Like when he's like, it's not a shock at all that he's stolen the eggs. You know right away. Like, as he's walking away and, like, strapping his bag back, I literally turned to Jess. I'm like, well, that boy's stolen some eggs. Yep. That's what's happened there.
He's like, and they're like, what? And the movie really labours on, like, what's in the bag? It's just my camera equipment.
Let me take the bag. I can take the bag. It's all right. I got it. Like, oh, my God.
Yeah.
So that's obvious. It's obvious that the family are that the couple are going to get back.
Well, I wanted to
together.
ask you about this. I've been very eager to ask you about your feelings on this relationship because I think for what it is, it's reasonably sweet the way they do it.
I think it works.
But that's what I was going to ask you about. I'm really curious to get your thoughts on that in more detail.
Yeah, that's what I was going to go on to say. Whilst it is obvious that they're going to get back together, I think it works, and I think some of it's appalling in the sense of, in particular, how much weight have you lost? Fuck off with that. Like the implication that he's got himself fitter, so she's like,
which I think there's a more generous way to look at that, which is more that like he wasn't looking after himself. And she was one of the reasons.
Yeah.
I think the subtext was, even though that's how it comes across because it's poorly written, because everything in this movie is, I think the subtext I got from that was more just that he'd sort of retreated into himself. He wasn't looking after himself. He wasn't the person when she first met. Like he'd sort of like, I don't know, become obsessed with his work maybe, or just gotten a bit lazy in his life in general. And like, and the losing weight suggests he's putting more effort in again to his life. And that's kind of what I was thinking maybe it was supposed to be implying. But yeah, I agree with you. It does not come across that way.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's definitely what they were going for, but the execution of it doesn't work.
Yeah.
But the execution of him doing a lot of brave stuff to save their son, and him seeing a different side, her seeing a different side to him, the notion of they've both clearly evolved and changed, the idea that things that were clearly an issue aren't particularly now, the idea of a challenging situation bringing them together. Alan's got some on the nose line about that. I think it works. I think both performances are strong. I think you actually get quite invested in them getting back together, and that's what I mean when I was comparing the characters before. Whilst I don't think that these characters are as entertaining, and I think that's partly down to the strength of, not that I'm criticising William H. Macy or anything. It is William H. Macy, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not that I'm criticising William H. Macy or anyone in this film, but Julianne Moore, Richard Cliff, Vince Vaughn, like, hell of a cast to compete against. But again, I don't think I got invested in any of the characters in the last movie as much, whilst it's not too much. It's still a little, but as much as, I hope they do get back together. I hope they do reunite by the end of this. And their love for their son was clearly strong. I couldn't necessarily predict. I assumed the kid was going to be alive. It's a Jurassic Park movie. You tend not to kill the kids. But
I think they even bottled out of killing the little girl at the beginning of the first one. They have a line. The second one. They have a line. She's fine. She's injured, but she's alive. They did that whole thing.
Yeah. But when he reappeared and he's got like a fucking camp set up and he's become like Island Rambo.
I kind of enjoyed that, if I'm being honest with you. I thought he's been there 8 weeks.
That's what I'm saying. I really enjoyed
I'll
that.
buy that.
Yeah, I liked that family. I liked,
Yeah.
when at the end the dad essentially sacrifices himself and she's yelling into the water, "Don't leave me like this, don't leave me," and he's like, "I'm not going anywhere." Like, yeah, I thought it worked.
Yeah.
I did enjoy that element for sure.
It's nice to have, because this is one of the things that it has over Lost World. I think is that like it's characters I'm willing to invest in because they're being written in a way where I'm investing in them more so than the last one. And look, I'm still not sure where I land because I just think they're both such broken movies. They may just be equally shit, but just in different ways, and that's making it harder for me. But like,
doesn't matter, Dan. You said
I will pick
by the end of this podcast.
Maybe I'll pick.
You got to get.
I'll pick.
Yeah, you. At the end of this podcast, we'll promote it, and this review has been rewound. And what's also going to happen is you're going to hop off the fence and fucking tell us which movie you prefer.
It's tricky though, because like I said, they're both so broken, and like I've not even properly talked about the bullshit ending yet, so I'm yet to rant about that.
Well, I want to. Before we do that,
Yes.
I want to talk. Let's compare. Now. I'm not necessarily. I really like Saw, and I really like Final Destination, right?
Sure.
But I'm not necessarily. I kind of like those films. I think the central premise of Final Destination is fun, and I think I like Saw's insane mythology, as we've talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And Final Destination has that a little bit.
Yeah, for those new to the podcast, Chris and I are absolutely obsessed with an unwieldy mythology that's built up over like several projects. Like once a series has gone so long that the mythology has started to eat itself, I don't know why, but we love that shit. We think that stuff's so entertaining.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely love it, right. Yeah. Now, Final Destination movies in particular, whilst I don't go to them for this, I appreciate that a key element for some people is inventive kills and inventive killing. And I think that's a part of the Jurassic Park movies as well. And I don't know if this film has enough dinosaurs killing people.
No, because
say
they bring 3 disposable characters to the island and then kill them all in 20 minutes.
Yeah, and then especially the cop out of Billy surviving.
Oh, don't get me
I must admit, Billy's death. I was like, oh well, I'm going to be complaining that Billy's death wasn't done particularly well or clearly, and then I was like, oh no, I'm not complaining about that at all because Billy's death. Now, what it does have is Dan said going into this movie that he maintains the goriest death in the whole franchise is in this film. And I assume, Dan, that is a dinosaur snapping someone's neck.
Did I say that?
Maybe not the goriest, but I thought you said something about the most brutal death. I thought you said something about that. Maybe I was wrong.
I'm not sure. I mean, the in the previous movie, the guy being torn in half by the 2 dinosaurs as they fight over him, I think is probably one of the most brutal deaths in the Jurassic Park movie. In this one, it's definitely that one though. I mean, that is pretty grim as deaths go.
But I don't. It gets to a point where you're like, well, they're not going to kill Alan. They're not going to kill the kid. They're building to these parents reuniting. So they're
in a bolder movie though, you could reunite the parents at maybe the start of Act 3 and then have one of them sacrifice himself to save the other to sort of solidify the.
I wouldn't have
I wouldn't have made that choice.
Like
no.
characters, but the fact that Billy survives, you're like, fucking hell, he was the only disposable one left. Like, and actually, Alan, if you want a bit of brutality, Alan's the last thing I said to him was this, and the fact that he, usually in this film, characters that fuck up get their comeuppance, and Billy fucked up badly by stealing those eggs. So,
yeah, I tell you what. There's a couple of things here. This links into my rant about the ending, actually. So we'll do all this in one. Let's start with Billy. Billy is a complete cop out. He should have died saving the kid. I think that's the absolute way that character should have gone out. Because the minute he's not like visibly, definitely dead on camera, I went, well, they'll find him later. Like, and I'm, and maybe that's partly me remembering the movie. Obviously, I've not seen it in a long time, and as I was watching it, I remembered big chunks of it. Sort of that old thing we've talked about, where the movie sort of reveals itself to you if you've not seen it in a long time, but you have seen it. As you watch it, you see a scene and you go, "Oh, I remember this scene follows this scene, and this is going to happen a little bit later." As you're watching it, but with this, like, I just immediately I was like, "Well, that." They're just sort of pecking at him as he rolls down the river. He's alive. Like, we'll bring him back. And I hated that because, as you said, there's just at a certain point early in the movie, you just go like, well, everyone that's disposable just got immediately. Again, though, it's the movie's the wrong way around. The tension's the wrong way around. We kill all the disposable characters the second they reach the island. You know what would have helped, Chris? Doing what I said and building up to deaths. with some other scenes first, but anyway, so I hated that. But I tell you what, Chris, I hated even more was then them not using it. So it's already cheap and shitty that Billy survives and is just on the fucking helicopter already. They found him, I guess. That's a fucking lucky person, let me tell you. But then they don't.
Also, how? Because seemingly the shot is them arriving.
Yeah, my only thought on that is that because he's in the helicopter, is that the helicopter did a few loops of the island before picking a landing spot for the vehicles, like the boats and stuff. So I'm fansplaining. This is just me sort of making it make sense, but because you're absolutely right, the movie doesn't make that clear. But my assumption is that they did a loop of the island's outer rim, like outer perimeter, to pick a beach to land on first. And they saw somehow from the, he got washed up on a beach because he was in a river. Rivers flow to the ocean, so he made it to the ocean on the water somehow. And then they found his body in like either the mouth of the river as it hit the ocean, or like just on the he'd crawled to the beach somehow. It's woolly as fuck, but like fine. I'll even go with the fact that they found him. But a more unforgivable crime for me, Chris, is that we have a scene after his death. When Alan says, the last thing I said to him was that you're as bad as the people who did this, and that's not true, and I wish I had a chance to say something different to him. And then they contrive for all of the bullshit we've just talked about, right? So they've created a bunch of bumps in the logic of the movie for me. How did they find him? Very coincidentally washed up right where they would land. Like, did they land first? How did they get him? The fact he's alive with all these wounds and he was washed up in the water, like, it just seems crazy coincidental that he's alive. But we've thrown caution to the wind to do that. At least now we're gonna get the payoff. Alan is gonna say something nice to Billy. No, they have.
Tell you what though,
they look and then he gets his hat back.
I was going to say, if you're gonna sacrifice that for anything, Dan, it's definitely that hat joke.
Yes,
ooh, boy.
Yeah,
that was a good one.
And this is indicative of the entire ending for me, because as much as this movie doesn't have the fourth act problem that we talked about for the last one, all of the movie just goes by now. Like, movie just wants to be over. And it does that with the most amount of bullshit. So the ending is bollocks, top to bottom. The raptors all surround them. They should be dead. There's this whole thing where I'm supposed to believe the raptors aren't killing them because they want the eggs back and they want them to show them where the eggs are first. But then they do show them the eggs and the raptors don't just immediately kill them now. They're like, well, there's the eggs. The eggs are safe. Now we murder all these people, right? And then there's the fucking... They take the eggs home, I guess. But also, that's why they've been following them the entire movie, I guess. But also, what the fuck was the raptor call for? He pulls out the thing and does the raptor call, and someone says he called for help. So is that it? They left because they thought help was coming? They thought he'd summoned help, so they left? That doesn't...
That's what it's meant to be, yeah.
But that doesn't match raptor behaviour. They don't... Like... None of this makes sense. First of all, they're way stupider in this movie than any other movie we've seen them in. But second of all, none of this behaviour makes sense. None of it. Like... Yeah, I hated it. I hated everything about it, Chris, so much. And then, like, just Ellie got an army somehow. Ellie got an army somehow. Cool. I don't know what else to say other than that's fucking obvious horse shit. She made a call.
She made some calls, Dan. You saw her run off to make some calls.
Mm-hmm. So when that child and the casually swept away other man, when she gets upset, he's like, "Oh, I know that you really liked like Jim, whatever he's called," and she's like, "It's not about him, it's about our son." And it's like, "Whoa, wow, you got over that guy real quick." His body was just in your face. Yeah. Not cool, lady. But anyway, I forgot what I got so distracted by that thought. I forgot what I was even saying. Oh yeah,
about Ellie calling an army.
Yeah. So they had as far as they knew, that guy and the kid were on that island, and they presumably made all of the various calls. No one turned up. Why is an army showing up for these guys? Because Ellie called. What?
Look, if you didn't pick up that her new husband is head of Response Army,
Dino Response Army.
Horror, head of Hodra, head of Dino Response Army. If you didn't pick up that he's Hodra, then you ain't paying attention, and that's your fault.
It's just like the movie was just like, we needed to end. All right, the raptors show up, but don't kill them for reasons. And they have the eggs, I guess. They wanted the eggs. That's what they wanted. And now they're okay. And they're happy to just go back. It flies in the face of every other raptor experience we've had, the entire franchise so far, but fine. And he blows on the thing and they go away. Okay, fine. He's called for help and they're concerned that help is big somehow. So they've not immediately just murdered them all. Fine. Okay, fine. And now the army are just here because Ellie. Okay, fine. The movie wants to end. I'm looking at the clock going, yeah, fine, end. Because for a movie that is significantly shorter than the others, it did feel about as long as the others.
Oh, yeah, definitely did.
It's amazing that despite being 35, 40 minutes shorter than the other Jurassic Park movies, it felt as long as them.
I went in so excited that it was shorter. And it just felt as long.
It doesn't feel it. So yeah, I hated the ending. I hated everything about it. I think everything from the minute those raptors come out of those bushes is absolute horse shit. It's just like the movie going, yeah, I'm done. And then he went home to his home planet at the end. Like, it's just, do you know what I mean? It's like a parent who's reading a story in a comedy, and the kid's fallen asleep, so they go, and then he died to the end, and they put the book down. Like, that's how the movie actually ends. Like, it's like the storyteller got bored. It's awful, absolutely awful. I hated everything about it.
Yeah, especially of everything you said, I agree with you. But the one that really bothered me was the Billy Allen. No, why have him feel that guilt and say that if you're not going to pay it off? Mm-hmm. Billy even looks upset at his reaction about the hat. Like it is. There is no form of redemption there. Like there's 3 opportunities for Billy to get redeemed. He could die saving the kid. Alan could say nice words to him there, but just none of them happen.
It drives me crazy. It's real bad. Also, why has this movie got another lucky backpack? I wanted to ask about that. What's the thinking behind that? It doesn't even come up in the movie.
I don't remember having a lucky backpack.
Yeah,
it's that irrelevant.
It's the beginning of the movie. Because the last movie she had a lucky backpack, and then it saves her life twice, right? And then this movie, they're on the plane there, and Alan goes, "Couldn't you afford a better bag? Because it's like falling apart." And he's like, "Oh, that's my lucky backpack." And I'm like, "Okay, we're doing that again, I guess." Doesn't come up. It doesn't come up. It's just dialogue, I guess. It's words for the sake of words.
I did enjoy the way, because in terms of that being an echo of the previous movie, I did enjoy the way this movie goes back to the same spots, but you feel the movie fighting against the fact that it knows the Lost World wasn't that popular.
Right. So it doesn't have any reverence for the Lost World at all.
No.
Yeah. But they don't find the backpack that was left behind after the Lost World's raptor attack and be like, "Oh, this must have been from the last incident here." You know, they don't do anything like that.
Yeah, there's a little bit, we pan across the cars and Alan looks at the windows kicked in and stuff, but there's no real sort of... there's just no real acknowledgement, which made me laugh. I thought the exchange about the books was quite fun, although you'd think a kid that had read Alan's books and Malcolm's books would be like, "We ain't going fucking near that island. What are you talking about? I don't give a fuck about the clever pun. Dinosaurs."
Well, they sort of try and explain that, because he says, I liked your books before you hated dinosaurs. Like, his favorite Alan Grant book is from before Alan Grant went to the island. So, like, I guess he just kind of feels like he came away with a negative experience, and that wasn't a fair estimation of his experience with the dinosaurs. That's kind of how I've interpreted it.
I did like at the beginning, like I liked Alan's despondence, if that's the right word. To are there any questions? Are there any questions not about Jurassic Park or or San Diego or this?
Oh yeah, that is great.
And,
yeah,
and his whole I love dinosaurs, but those things aren't dinosaurs. They're man-made experiments. And I don't really know how you would then continue that into the rest of the movie, but I sort of wish they'd found a way, in a way, because maybe, again, it would have been, when the bigger Tyrannosaurus, the thing bigger than the Tyrannosaurus comes in, maybe there's something there, I don't know. But I liked that. That felt like a very real reaction to the first movie. And I wish that could have played out more and had more impact into the rest of this movie.
Yeah, and I also think the movie probably should have done some less jokes than it did. That some jokes work because you can still have, theoretically, the tension that should follow it. Like, when they hear the cell phone and they look round and the Spinosaurus is just stood there staring at them, that's brilliant. That's very, very funny. One of my favourite things in the whole movie. Like, just a great shot, perfect gag, great comic timing, and then we can still have the chase. We can still have the drama. I'm okay with that. I don't care for the introduction of the T-Rex in this movie, the most scary creature from the previous two movies. Alan goes, "Nobody move," and then they all comically just run off and ignore that instruction, and they're fine. And please, no, with the comedy, in moments like that. That just undercut everything. No good. Also, just a tiny note, there's also like the movie sometimes talks so it doesn't need to talk, like, as well. Like, sometimes it's like they felt like they needed dialogue. Like, there's a moment when they're in the plane and they're flying off, and the guy that's missing, Cooper, the only other human being that they're aware of is on this island, comes out onto the runway, and Alan really dumbly yells, "That's Cooper!" Yeah, Alan, it's Cooper. Thank you. Good. And that's a dinosaur. Like, what are you fucking doing?
No, Dan, I needed more. That's a dinosaur. Yeah. Like, I knew it was Cooper. I didn't need that.
Yeah, that may have been the moment. Replace "that's Cooper" with "that's a Spinosaurus," a more threatening predator than the T-Rex.
Yeah. Absolutely do it there. It's the same in terms of the comedy. It's the same problem as The Lost World. Like, the first film was a magic act in being about 5 different genres, and this movie isn't any of those genres.
Yeah, which I think it's almost forgivable because it's such an incredible feat that the first movie pulled off its meshing of genres. Any movie trying to ape that is never going to get the recipe right. It's just this perfect, wondrous, like, culminance of things, that first one, where it's just like, it almost feels like luck. Like, obviously it's not luck. A lot of people worked very hard on that movie. But that balance of tones, whether that will work or not when you translate from the page to the screen and edit it, is really luck-based. And I don't even want to hold it against this movie, that this movie couldn't achieve that, because it's kind of amazing that the first movie did. And to criticize this one for not doing... Do you know what I mean? It's like... Yeah, it's like seeing someone do a really incredible depth-defying stunt, and then someone else does a slightly smaller one, and you're like, well, wasn't as good as the last one. It's like, yeah, obviously, that was like the most insane thing I've ever seen. So, yeah, I don't blame the movie for not mixing its tones as well, but, like, at least pulling out the jokes that undercut the tension would be good. That's a good place to start, at the very least.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm out of things to say about Jurassic Park 3.
I got a couple little notes. First of all, we're on the island in 17 minutes, which I always enjoy because that has been the trend. The first movie, we're at the island, we're doing the soaring music at 16 minutes. Second movie, 17 minutes. This movie, 17 minutes. I just really appreciate that. I had a glance at Jurassic World. We're on the island in 6. I just was curious, and we're on the island at 6 in Jurassic World, which I thought was interesting.
But isn't the point of Jurassic World that Jurassic Park now exists in the world? So
Jurassic Park has been built. It exists now. Yes, It's just got a different name. 100%. I did write down a joke that I did like, though, which is when the big, giant, muscle, obvious mercenary guy, and he says, "Oh, how do you know, this family?" And he's like, "Through church." That made me chuckle. I don't know why.
I'm going to interrupt with something irrelevant now, or irrelevant to this movie at least. But it's been on my mind, and you just said it then, and it was on my mind again.
Mm-hmm.
Why this new movie seems to be a third iteration, basically. It's like, we've got the Jurassic Park trilogy, the Jurassic World trilogy. Why is this movie not called Jurassic Island or Jurassic Park Rebirth even? Like, I just think Jurassic World, is it purely because the Jurassic World portion of the franchise has made so much money that they feel that do they feel that has more recognition now than Jurassic Park? Like,
you mean the upcoming
surely
movie?
you'd call it something else, right? Jurassic Island, for example, strikes me as a logical one.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Or even just going back to like Jurassic Park and then with the subtitle. It's interesting because this movie had a few different potential titles. It was going to be like Jurassic Park Extinction or Extinction Jurassic Park 3 or Jurassic Park Breakout at one point, but was all simplified to Jurassic Park 3. And I will say, the extinction element we'll come back to because that was relevant to the original script, and we'll come back to that because there's a reason it's different. But according to Jurassic Park: The Ultimate Visual History, Johnston said that no one was particularly fond of the title we had for the movie in the end, but you certainly knew what it was. So he didn't like it being shortened to Jurassic Park 3. And with Rebirth, to answer your question, I do think it's just that they feel World is a more recognizable title now. That's why they've done it. I don't agree with that choice. I agree with you. Come up with if you're starting a new trilogy, new titling system for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a massive shame that World is more recognizable. But yeah, probably true.
Well, I mean, I in my memory, and I've not rewatched World. I probably will because the new one's coming out, and I probably am going to see that in cinema because I've seen all of these in cinema except for the second one. So I'm probably going to rewatch the World trilogy following this, not for the podcast, but like just in general, because I am curious enough to see because I remember really enjoying World. I don't think it's perfect. It's not as strong as the first one, obviously, but I remember it being better than the 2 sequels that we originally got. So I was happy with that.
I think the title. Sorry, I was going back to the title, not necessarily, but I was talking as if I was. That's what threw me. Then I was talking as if I was going to follow your point, and I wasn't at all. But fair, because I can't, because I haven't seen it. I'm excited to watch it though.
It's fine. I think it might be a good cleanser from these two very not functional movies to watch a functional.
Yeah,
movie.
but I didn't find. Look, I know I've criticised both movies quite a bit, but I didn't find either of them inoffensive. I've enjoyed movies a lot less on this podcast than I did.
That is true. Sure. That is true. That is true of both of these.
I think the titling doesn't help because this film is consistently, I would say, considered by people to be the worst. And I know it sounds stupid, but I just feel like the fact that it's so easy to go, oh yeah, it's the third one because it hasn't got its own identity and all the others do. I don't think it should have been titled Jurassic Park like The Lost World was, but I do think having a title might have helped its longevity. And not having that fucking talking dinosaur sequence also would have helped its longevity.
Yeah.
Which we've not even talked about. We're like an hour and a half in and we've not even talked about it because it's a fucking fart in the wind. It's so irrelevant and I just wish it didn't exist because it wouldn't become the fucking meme for this movie being a bad movie.
Yeah. But they couldn't have predicted that, but I agree. It's a dumb moment that just shouldn't be in the movie. I mean, there's not much to say on it. I think that's why we haven't really talked about it. It just shouldn't be there. It's not worth the gag, the stupidity of it. And again, do you want to talk about undercutting tension? How about making a dinosaur seem silly before you've even seen a scary one? not great, especially against a raptor and a raptress. But you know what I mean? Like, come on, like God, let's. And I know it's playing on the idea that he's been talking about raptors talking, which, by the way, the raptors talking. Just very quickly, I like it as an idea. I don't like it in execution. When they're there going at each other, like they're having a conversation and back and forth, and we're just watching this play out. Fuck off. They never did that in the previous movies. I'm happy for them to make noises and for me to go, oh, that's them communicating. They're hunting in packs. Those noises aren't just random guttural roars. They're actually communicating. Don't have them sit there like they're sipping a cup of tea at the office break room. Just like, yeah, that guy's got the eggs. Oh, we better chase him then. Like, no, fuck off. Like, come on. Like, it's terrible.
The problem is they do nothing with it. The trailer makes it seem like that's going to be a central point of the film.
Yeah.
But it isn't.
Yeah. When you mentioned that last week, I was like, oh yeah, that's a plot. Because you'd watched the trailer and you mentioned it at the end of last episode. And in my head, I went, I'm pretty sure you're going to be disappointed.
Watch that trailer. Like, it puts a pin in that.
I'm sure you're right.
And I think the thing is, at no point in the movie do I feel like they're in more danger because the dinosaurs can talk to each other now. And that's
but that's the question. To talk to each other now. Talk to each other now. He's positing they were doing that in the first movie. We just didn't understand it. But that's why it's so ridiculous that in this movie they're shown like actually like having a back and forth, which is just absurd. Like, I'm okay for them to keep making noises and for me to be like, oh shit, they're calling. For, like, the one that calls for help. Perfect. That's great. Do that. Or be facing one and have it go, arr, arr, and he'd be like, oh shit, I think it's called for help from the sides. Like, I think I understand what's happening. Don't have them like back and forthing like they're having a chit chat. Fuck off. So bad. So bad. Yeah, so no thank you to the raptors talking in the use in this movie. I like but don't like the more persistent use of John Williams' theme. They got a new composer this time, and I feel like he kind of went, I don't want to fuck with Williams stuff. So he used a lot more. Williams, obviously, in the previous movie, felt very confident to just go, yeah, I'm not going to use my old one. I'm going to do more, do new. Whereas this guy was like, make sure I use the Williams stuff. And maybe he used it a little too much, in my opinion. But hey ho. That is what it is.
I think to be fair to him, I think I'd have made the same decision.
Oh yeah, it's a hard choice. It is a hard choice. It's tough. Just to back up the movie is backwards act. I've just noticed that that I made a note about this as well that I've not touched on yet, which is that the scene of Majesty when they're in the boat and then they as they're looking over the beautiful dinosaurs and their majestic grace. It's like the third act. Like, it's the end of the second act, third act. We're doing that scene. They're in the boat. They've already had the big tussle with the we've not even talked about the aviary scene. Jesus, we'll come back to that in a second. But like, yeah, fuck off. Like, yeah, let's not do the Majesty scene after we've already had brutal murders. This movie is all backwards, driving me crazy.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, yeah, and I will say, right, just eggs as motivation for the raptors to come after them, in general, dumb and pointless and doesn't need to be in the movie for a couple of reasons. But one is, in all the other movies, the raptors came after them just because they're raptors, and that's what they did, they hunted. I didn't need a reason for the raptors to be following them.
No.
I don't question why the dinosaur that swallowed the satellite phone keeps following them, keeps turning up. The Spinosaur. So, what are we doing? Like, actually, what are we doing? What's the point of that? Would you have questioned it if the raptors kept chasing them, Chris?
No, because it was I'm a dumb man who doesn't know anything about dinosaurs. I wasn't sure what dinosaur was chasing him for the eggs and what dinosaur wasn't. So, but also, you've established a world where fucking dinosaurs come after people. So don't worry about it. Just have the dinosaurs going after people. In a way, it lessens Alan's fear of going back because there's an implication that they wouldn't be in danger were it not for these eggs. No,
ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. Mad. And then also, I've got a note here as well. Spinosaurus chases them, and it bursts through a big concrete and metal like fence, and then they shut a thin metal door and it can't get through, and then it sort of roars and you hear it stomping away all like disappointed, like, oh, I didn't get them this time. Fuck off, movie. Just stop. Absolutely. This movie has no idea how to resolve its tension ever at any point. It never successfully does.
You know the other thing, a big thing about this movie, we are an hour and a half into this podcast, and at no point have we talked about any of the set pieces or sequences, which just shows you how worthless they are.
They're wishy-washy. They're woolly. They're vague. Oh, the Avery sequence is the closest to being distinct, and it's probably, is it the best? It's probably the best of the ones we have, but it's bad. Here's the thing, right? And I think I've just decided which movie I prefer. I'll come back to that in a second. The Avery sequence, they're on the fence. They're on these like mesh things, and then it's the closest the movie gets to building genuine tension. When Alan's looking around and realizing they're in these like weird cage things, then he looks up and he sees the ceiling of it, and he suddenly figures out that they're in with the not pterodactyls, the pterodons, whatever they're called. Part of the pterodactyl range of dinosaurs, but they're not pterodactyls. But anyway, the flying ones for people who don't know dinosaurs. And when it comes from the smoke or the steam, or whatever you want to call it, the out towards the kid, and it's all like on its like wings, like clipping along. Like that's really good. Like what? Like that's the movie understanding how to introduce a dinosaur that we've not seen before in a way that's threatening, and it's like the closest the movie gets to that. But then it's like immediately like, oh, the tension, as if you could just repack a parachute loosely like that, the way he did, and then like let it go out of a normal backpack and be attached to it and it work. And like, where's the harness? Was he wearing the harness the whole movie? I don't think he was. It doesn't make any sense. Then he flies over and sort of saves the kid. The movie just immediately shits itself. That's what's crazy. That's probably the best set piece, because all the other ones are just chased for a bit, then free, chased for a bit, contrived reason to be okay.
Yeah, exactly. That is the problem with and that's why we've not discussed them for sure.
Yeah. The T-Rex with the Spinosaurus is okay, but the special effects aren't great. It looks like a video game cutscene. I don't mind that the Spinosaur wins in theory, but in practice it's just kind of like it happens so fast the movie can't capitalize on telling us why anything that's happening is significant. So it's just not good.
Speaking of that, like, is it me or do the dinosaurs in multiple moments of this movie not look as good? In particular, when the dinosaur is attacking the plane at the beginning, I was like, well, that looks like a rubber dinosaur in a way that no dinosaur did in the first two movies.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of two problems. I think they still got the issue where they're not using the rotoscope stop motion anymore, so the dinosaurs sometimes look a little bit floaty and like they're not really in the scene. I was looking really carefully because they look a little worse in this one, the CG ones. I was like, is he compositing? Are they not composited as well? And I was really looking closely for it. The compositing seems fine, so it just must be the weight that's throwing my eyes off, because there were a few times when I was like, they don't look right, and I can't put my finger on why. I think it's the weight that they don't move naturally. Like there's a scene when a raptor comes down some steps, and it sort of looks like it floats down the steps, and I was just like, something's wrong with the way this has been animated. Maybe they did it quicker, cheaper. I don't know. It just didn't look right. And then there are a couple of instances where the puppets are a bit exposed. And I think this is the experience of a Steven Spielberg versus the experience of a Joe Johnston. Now, I'm not going to get into which director is more talented. We know the answer. But the starkest difference between these two directors, as talented as they both are, one more than the other, is I feel like Spielberg just understands how to shoot the puppets to not give away their puppetness. Whereas I feel like Johnston sometimes chose angles that really accidentally gave the game away. I don't know what.
I think that's fair.
I don't know what the secret sauce is. I don't know if it's just lighting or if it's like, so you do it in a dark scene, because all of this movie pretty much takes place in the day, which I appreciate on a sense of like the last movie was very set at night, so I think it's only right to give this movie its own vibe and set it in the day. It does sort of exposure special effects a bit more occasionally though, and often the puppets look not good in this movie, and I feel like it was like they were either shot too wide, so they really looked like puppets, or they were shot where you could sort of see the neck moving in a weird way. I don't know. Certain things he was including in the framing sort of gave away their unrealness. And I forgive me, listeners, for not knowing exactly what it was he was doing different. But you could tell, and it seems strange because it's still Stan Winston puppets. that looked good in all the other movies. You know, the only different factor is the camera work, the choices, and how we show them, because they're the same puppets doing the same thing. Maybe we lingered on them too much because of editing. I don't know, but yeah, maybe in the first movie the shots were just quicker, so you couldn't really ever get close enough look at a puppet to see that it was a puppet, and this movie lingered more. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure what the cause is, but yeah, not as good, unfortunately. Still reasonably good, even compared to modern days. Like, as a whole, the movie special effects hold up, I would say, but yeah, that's not great. Yeah.
No, it doesn't look good at all. And like we always talk about on here, I can't necessarily tell you why, but I think the weighting and for me, it just whenever they've used animatronics, it doesn't feel like that's worked as well.
Yeah.
And like you say, I think you've hit the nail on the head with there's something about the camera angles he's chosen.
Yeah, there's just something in the filmmaking or the editing or somewhere that's just exposed them more than had been done previously. And again, I don't know the ins and outs of what it is, but it's something. Yeah, it's one of those things. Let's have a look. Oh, just a little credit for a really good shot. Just if we're going to compliment the. If we're going to complain about Joe Johnston's choices in directing, let's pick a shot that he nailed. There's a shot when Billy is like going down the river and he's being pecked at, and there's like an object that could be a tree or a rock that comes into frame, but it's really blurry because it's right in the foreground, and we're using a shallow depth of field, but like it's focused in on where Billy is, and then the depth of field switches. And we reveal it's also one of the pterodactyls, not pterodactyls. I'll get their name right in a minute. And then it turns to the camera. Oh, that's cinema, baby. That's a beautiful shot. I love that shot so much. That was so good because like you're not looking at it, and then the camera literally, the focus pulls, brings it into focus. You realize what it is, and that's the exact moment it turns and looks at you. Oh, come on. That's great filmmaking. That's just top tier.
Yeah, it was good.
It's top tier. I've only got one or two tiny more notes very quickly. Just quickly, editing is awful in the movie, generally speaking. So there's two big problems that happen in one sequence. So I'm going to use that sequence as an example, just from an editing perspective. It's the sequence where the Spinosaur attacks them on the boat, right? The fuel tank gets punctured, which is why the water sets on fire later. But it is a really quick, missable shot, and it happens way before the flare is used. So by the time the flare is used, you've kind of, even if you spotted it, potentially forgotten it. So when the water just lights on fire, you're like, oh yeah, the fuel. You needed to have, when Alan points the gun at the flare gun, at the Spinosaur, have him like glance down, spot the barrel, the chewed up barrel that's released all the fuel into the water, then aim the gun down and show a shot of him doing that, and then have him fire it. From an editing perspective, only including one shot that reinforces that the barrel was there. Even just a second shot of the barrel a little bit later on in the scene would have helped. So yeah, dreadful. But then, oh yeah, and I'm not even sure that was the plan, by the way, because he aims it at the dinosaur, not at the water, and it's just lucky that it bounces off the dinosaur and it goes into the water and then lights that on fire. But anyway, don't worry about that. Then the other one, right? You know that scene, Chris? It's in a lot of movies where a character has just seemingly died, and they're like, oh, I'm going to miss you. And then it's like, I'm not going anywhere. And it cuts around and the guy stood there, because he's alive and he's survived. And everyone's like, yay! And they give him a hug. You know what they never do in scenes like that, Chris? While the person's making the speech about how sad they're going to be, they don't show him climbing out of the water, stumbling to his feet first.
That's amazing.
So that then, when he says, I'm not going anywhere, we, the audience, are already well aware he's alive. It's just the characters realising.
I didn't spot that. That's amazing.
Dreadful. It's like, while she's being sad that he's dead, we see him stumbling out of the water. So that when he has his hero moment, we already know. It's just a bad choice. I don't like it. Sorry, movie.
That is a bad choice. I can't believe I didn't notice that. That sounds awful.
Yeah, it's pretty awful. It's pretty bad. So yeah, editing in the movie, not good. Also, sorry to those of you who worked on the movie. I'm sure you're all fine editors. This one didn't work out. Sorry about that. So I think it's time, Chris.
Let's do it. You ready? Let's triv it up!
I'm going to give you some trivia. And then after the trivia, I guess we'll do our Jerry's final thought, and I'll tell you which movie I think is better.
I think I know where you're leaning. I think I've got that vibe.
Yeah, well, maybe as I worked it out across the podcast, maybe you did too. We'll see. Or maybe I'll surprise you.
I mean, there's two choices. I don't think surprise is possible here, but
yeah, it's one or the other, isn't it? What if I'm like, I think it's X-Men 3. That's the better movie. That'd be very surprising.
That would be. I
would watch both of these movies over X-Men 3. The Last Stand.
Yeah, I think I probably would as well. Yeah.
Anyway, so after the release of the second film, obviously, everyone was being asked about, you doing more? I think my favourite of the quotes regarding this was Spielberg, who I think was imbibing the spirit of Michael Crichton, who wasn't dead at this point, but was just, very much in Michael Crichton mode when asked. He said, it would give me a tremendous headache to think about, just to think about. So Spielberg was done. He was done with dinosaurs. As was Michael Crichton, who absolutely refused to write a third book. Just was not doing it.
Yeah. To the surprise of no one that's listened to the previous 2 episodes of this podcast.
No one hates dinosaurs more than Michael Crichton, it seems. No, that's not fair. But he definitely didn't want to do the second one, really, and it was kind of a victim of his own success there. But when the project was announced in 1998, Universal claimed Crichton was working with Spielberg on the story, and Spielberg would serve as a producer. Now, there are conflicting reports. Some say that Crichton did a few hours, he did a meeting, but couldn't come up with anything, so he just sort of left and never worked on the movie again. Joe Johnston would later say that Crichton never worked on this movie in any way, shape, or form, despite that initial information from Universal. I am leaning towards he showed up on day one, because I don't think Johnston was there on day one. I think there was an early meeting with some writers that happened before Joe Johnston was director officially. So I think it's possible that Crichton did do at least, a meeting about this movie. That seems more likely to me. But either way, he weren't writing it. He wasn't involved. He had nothing really to contribute based on the stories I've heard. So, the earliest idea of this movie that Spielberg had from those early meetings involved Alan Grant secretly living on one of the islands to study the creatures, sort of like a Robinson Crusoe figure. In fact, I've got a quote from Joe Johnston when he was interviewed with Movie Line, and he said he'd snuck in after not being allowed in to research dinosaurs and was living in a tree like Robinson Crusoe. But I couldn't imagine this guy wanting to get back on any island that had dinosaurs on it following the events of the first movie.
Yeah, that's bad. That's a bad idea.
Yeah, I agree with Johnston on that front, very much so. Yeah, I'm not sure I like that idea either. So then
it's awful.
Yeah, so then they brought in a guy called Craig Rosenberg to start work on the script. He was working on it in June 1999, and basically, these days, he's known as a writer for The Boys, but he's done a bunch of stuff over his career. Feel free to IMDb him, dear listeners. But his draft involved teenagers becoming marooned on the island, which sounds more like a slasher movie to me, and doesn't have any of the original characters in it, and feels like a real sort of diversion, which I actually think for a third movie sometimes, actually stepping away from the formula of the previous two is actually a really good idea. Die Hard with a Vengeance is a great example of just step away from the formula, make something good. I think that's fine. The second one did mostly ape the first one. If they hadn't done the fourth act, that could have been your stepping away. Just doing the dinosaur in San Diego as your third movie. But if you've not got that option, sort of turning it into a bit of a slasher movie with a bunch of teenagers on sneaking onto the island, it's kind of a fun idea, I think.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, but Johnston was announced as the film's director in August, so I just want to repeat these dates. June 1999, they hire Craig Rosenberg. Johnston is announced as the director in August 1999. Spielberg at that point gave him complete creative freedom, and he rejected that draft in September. So the guy starts working on the script in June. It is dead in the water by September. Johnston later told About.com that it was not a badly written script, but he felt the viewers would not want to see such a story, which seems like a very nice and diplomatic way to phrase it, except he would later on tell DVDfile.com that it was like a bad episode of Friends.
Oh, God. Which, considering they were writing a Jurassic Park movie, is quite the insult.
Yeah, it read like a bad episode of Friends, is the exact quote. So, can I just say, I do love when you do, when we do a movie from this sort of early 2000s era, when all of the interviews and quotes come from like weird websites that don't exist anymore. About.com and DVDfile.com.
Yeah, DVDfile.com really got me. Yeah. I was like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah, I love it. I loved getting the sources for all of this stuff. It's brilliant. Anyway, so then they hired a guy called Peter Beckman to write a draft. His draft kind of is the bones of the final script, and therefore he has a credit. So it basically, his version of the script, Alan, is the expert hired for an aerial tour of the island, but there's no secret rescue mission element. The plane is forced to land. They run into the Spinosaur, eggs stolen, Avery sequence. All of that stuff is still in the movie. It's all there. But there are some big differences. First of all, there's a B plot on the mainland about mysterious killings, which turns out to be the pterodactyl type dinosaurs. They're flown over because, they're free. They're not restricted to the land like something like the T-Rex is. But basically, the reason the government wants Alan Grant, you'll remember I talked earlier about Alan Grant like having to talk at a Senate hearing and all that stuff. It was so that the US could get control of the island because their plan was to bomb it to death and kill all of the dinosaurs. The movie had a surprisingly dark ending, this draft, where Alan Grant opts to go extinct with the dinosaurs after getting the family to safety.
Fucking hell. Jesus.
Hence the original working title of Jurassic Park, Extinction. So Johnson felt that this was a vague title because it could refer to humanity, the dinosaurs, or once you saw the film, Alan Grant. But the studio felt it suggested a definitive end to the franchise, which they did not like the sound of.
That's what they had a problem with, not Alan Grant killing himself with all the dinosaurs.
Yeah. Well, look, they have figured that out eventually, but I'm going to tell you right now, spoiler alert, Chris, they figured that out way too late. We'll come to that. Now, Sam Neill turned down the role of Gandalf in Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings in order to do this movie. Now.
Oh, dear.
And now. We have, in the past, judged certain actors for turning down things that they probably should have done. Look, hindsight, 2020, we have that benefit. Who knows, right? Jurassic Park, maybe at the time, just felt like a really safe bet. Because the first one had been successful, the second one had been successful, seemed like a safer bet than, Lord of the Rings, which was, at the time, I think, to many, considered a very risky proposition, especially because they were making all three back to back. It was a big, huge production, but it was like, will an adaptation of a crusty old book from a long time ago, about like elves and dwarves and stuff, will that capture this cultural zeitgeist? Feels a bit old-fashioned. Certainly, but that's how we create new things. Sometimes we take a risk, and obviously in hindsight it's easy for me to say that was a very bad decision. But I guess at the time that seemed riskier.
Also, to some degree it wasn't, because Ian McKellen. Like, do you know what I mean? It's so hard to imagine it not being him.
Right. No, and look, I think it worked out the best for everyone. I love Sam Neill. He might have made a great Gandalf, but I mean we're not replacing Ian McKellen, are we? Let's be honest. Yes, but based on interviews he's done in the past since, Sam Neill, like with the BBC and stuff, he was happy to return. And a lot of people characterize this as like, oh, he didn't want to come back, and then his career wasn't going so good, so we had to take a Jurassic Park paycheck. He wasn't really asked to do the second one. He wasn't part of the script. And when he got asked to do this one, he jumped at the chance. He was absolutely happy to do it. And apparently he had always been a bit like disappointed in his performance in the first movie and thought he could have done better. So the opportunity to do another one, great. He was genuinely thrilled to do it. And even now, he still defends this movie and says it gets a bad rap. Well, I might have a quote for that later. If not, I'll find it at some point. But he still defends this movie to this day. One weird thing.
Go on. I think that's fair. I don't think this movie deserves the reputation it's got.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's actually fair.
No, I would agree with that as well. I don't think it's a good movie, but I don't think it's as bad as as its reputation implies, for sure. So as part of his contract, he did request that the Australasian premiere of the movie take place in his hometown in New Zealand. So,
Nice.
Good for him. Gotta get a little something for yourself. Jeff Goldblum has commented in interviews that it's not that he refused to do this movie, he just simply wasn't asked. He wasn't part of the script, which is fine by him and was fine by everyone. So a lot of people have, again, made assumptions about the cast being and not being in these movies. There's an assumption that Sam Neill came back because of bitterness and that he'd refused to do the second one, which wasn't true. There's also an assumption that Jeff Goldblum, after the critical reception to the second one, had opted not to come back. Not true at all. He would have done it in a heartbeat, from what I can tell. So everyone's happy. Let's not make drama. For the role of Billy, they did have a lot of different options, and it's a big list. I'll skip through this because it's actually bigger than even I realised. Hugo Weaving, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, Josh Hartnett, Christian Slater, Ethan Hawke, and Orlando Bloom were among quite an extensive list of people that were up for the role of Billy Brennan. Those are the biggest names that stick out to me. I think I liked who we got for Billy. The Alessandro Nivola, I think his name is. I think he does a good job. I don't know if I would want any of the other guys in that list. Does anyone in that list stick out to you?
Orlando Bloom might have added a certain charm to it,
Right.
because the movie does require the character to make a bad decision, but also be heroic and charming. And Orlando Bloom treads that line very well, I think.
Yeah. Although presumably he would have had he would have had the same problem doing it as Sam Neill, because he would have had to presumably have chosen if these productions overlapped with Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, and look, if he had the choice, he made the right choice for him, for sure. So yeah,
Christian Slater and Josh Hartnett seem okay as well for that same reason. But I'm with you. I think I'm happy with who we got.
Yeah, for sure.
The character Cooper. And if you're thinking, which character is Cooper? He's one of the goons that gets killed right at the beginning of the movie. It's the one where Alan lamely points out the window and goes, "It's Cooper!" He said stupidly. Stellan Skarsgård, Steve Buscemi, and Tony Shalhoub were all considered amazing casting on all four. I would have had any three. I mean, look, the guy that does it is great, but it's a small role. It's not really a John Dial, I think his name is, the guy that eventually did it. He did a great job, perfectly fine. But it would be funny if Steve Buscemi got killed in the first 3 minutes of a Jurassic Park sequel. That would amuse me.
Yeah, especially when you look back on and reflect on that.
Yeah.
Dan, do you mind if are you doing casting for a while? Could I nip to the loo whilst you do it, if that's all right?
Absolutely. Yes. So for Amanda Kirby, again, a lot of names at the time: Kate Blanchett, Sharon Stone, Lisa Kudrow, Sarah Jessica Parker, Cynthia Nixon, and Brooke Shields. Of those choices, I really like Tia Leone, and we haven't really talked about her on this and her performance, but her performance with William H. Macy is kind of they've got really good chemistry, and I think they work perfectly in this movie. And I wouldn't, even though I love Lisa Kudrow in pretty much anything, as with a Sharon Stone or a Kate Blanchett, just amazing actresses. Just would have probably absolutely nailed it. But even though there are some names on that list that maybe go, like with the casting for Billy, I actually don't think I would have. I think they got the right person for the job, because I think she brings a lot to that relationship. And then for Paul Kirby, again, a bunch of names, but some you'll recognise for sure. Ray Liotta, Robert Patrick, let's have a look. Stephen Lang, Liam Neeson, which is an interesting choice. Matthew Broderick. But honestly, I think there is just something about William H. Macy's performance, I should say, that really does bring it together. It's not just about them individually, it's about that chemistry. And I feel like you remove one piece of that puzzle and it doesn't work. So I'm not taking any of the other options for those. Although, funnily enough, William H. Macy was actually not able to shoot the movie originally because there was a slight conflict with a movie called Focus, but it was only a month, so in the end they just moved the production back 1 month to accommodate him. Whereas they couldn't have done that with obviously Sam Neill and Lord of the Rings, because obviously that was a several year shoot. But funnily enough, that movie was called Focus, and also starred Laura Dern. So Laura Dern all over the place with these.
Yeah, she was working. I think there's a very specific. You have to believe the actors have to have chemistry where you can believe both that they got divorced and that they get back together.
Yes, it's very particular.
Yeah, and I think that those two absolutely sell that in a way that means I just go, nah, I don't want a portal gun. I'll stick with what we got.
Yeah, I think the casting director did a great job here, whoever that was. When William H. Macy was asked why he accepted the role, he said, "Because I'm 50 years old and I get to fight a dinosaur." It's fair.
He's not wrong.
He's not wrong at all. Although, right, so this is where it gets a bit... I should have said this at the beginning. It sounds like this trivia is going to go on forever because I've already been doing it for several minutes and we haven't gotten to, like, production or general trivia or anything like that yet. This trivia is very front-loaded, but once we get to production, we just like, there's not much. It's a really weird one. There's a huge amount of information about the writing and casting of this movie, very little information about the rest. And there's a reason for that, because it's fucking insane. Let's very quickly cover this. So in July 2000, 5 weeks before filming would begin, Johnston and Spielberg rejected the entire script that we'd been discussing. So this is the script that involves, the government and Alan Grant having to testify and then them bombing the island because there's a B plot where people are going missing in the mainland and they're being eaten and all of that stuff. Basically, they rejected the whole thing because they thought it was too complicated. And particularly the ways in which they got Alan to the island, where he was having to make deals with multiple people. One to get the rights to open a research centre, one to get the money. And they just thought it was too much. But the problem was, $18 million had been spent on pre-production. They were building dinosaurs. They were fully storyboarded. And they were making sets already. And production was 5 weeks away, Chris. 5 weeks. But they were like, nah, it's no good. So, the first thing they did was ask David Coop, the writer of the first two movies, and he was not free to do it, but had a suggestion for simplifying it, and it was him. He was the one who said rescue mission, which, yeah, fair enough. Although if they were worried about it being too complicated, maybe the whole subterfuge plot where William H. Macy's character is pretending to be rich maybe shouldn't have been there. But anyway, so the rewrite, with that idea in mind, the rewrite had to do that, but also it had to still incorporate many of the sequences, ideas, and dinosaurs from the rejected draft, because they had to salvage as much of the $18 million they just flushed down the toilet as possible. So then they bring in Alexander Payne and Jim Taylor to start on a new draft in July 2000. Now, just want to make this point. Universal hired them based on their uncredited work rewriting Meet the Parents. They were not fans of the franchise, so they had to watch the previous films. And they then spent the next 4 weeks writing their draft of the script with the bones of the original draft, in the sense of, like, it had to have some of the same set pieces, the aviary, and stuff like that. Now, reportedly, Payne and Taylor, and this is Alexander Payne as in the now successful director, like award-winning director Alexander Payne, made a million amazing movies like Sideways and, like, stuff like that. So he's doing okay. He's done pretty well for himself. But at the time he was kind of a comedy writer, and apparently they added a ton of humor to the script, took out the dark ending. A lot of the stuff that's in the movie now is from that. But they the final movie, when they finally saw it, had a lot of the comedy cut out. And they were very disappointed that all their jokes were gone. Well, I've got a quote for that, but it's a little bit further down my trivia, but that's one of those things. So yeah, because ideas from Buckman's script were still there, but Payne and Taylor rewrote it, the final credit does go to those three writers. But when production starts, the script is not finished. The report is that the first act was pretty much locked down. The second act was like needed some redrafting, but was almost there. And the third act was an absolute mess and was still being worked on actively. So there's also
insane. Everything about this is mad.
Yeah, but it does explain a lot about this movie.
Still
doesn't
can't
it?
get over their uncredited work on Meet the Parents.
Yeah, I knew you'd like that. There's a September 25th draft, which is about 4 weeks into production, that credits revisions to a guy called John August, who remains uncredited, which usually implies he didn't. Not much of his work was used. But John August is apparently known as the writer of the Charlie's Angels franchise. So, who knows? But from what I can tell, Chris, production is chaos. There's no script. Payne and Alexander Payne and the other guy, Payne and Taylor, they're still working on the script. This John August guy does some work. They even apparently, and I couldn't verify this one, but even Buckman, the original writer of the script, whose script they completely scrapped, they even brought him in out of desperation to work on scenes and get stuff together. William H. Macy relayed his discontent to the TV Guide at the time, saying, "The script has been evolving and being rewritten as we go. And what you want to say is, who launched a $100 million ship without a rudder, and who's getting fired for this?"
Fucking hell.
But then he
hold it back.
No, but then he added, "But that's the way it goes. That's the way they make these movies. Big deal. I think someone should be shot, but I'm not in charge."
That is phenomenal. That is William H. Macy.
I love him so much. And apparently during production, he noted that Spielberg was not seen on set despite a chair with his name, bearing his name, being present constantly. Apparently, Macy is quoted as saying, "You never knew if that was a threat or a promise." Can I just say, I'm coming out of this absolutely loving William H. Macy.
Yeah, fuck yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So, Sam Neill had nicer things to say about his experience. He told JoeBlow.com. Remember JoeBlow.com? That's still a thing? Might be. It's like, again, I fucking love these like early like thousands. Let me just check. Is that still a website? It's still, yeah, that still exists. Wow. Established 1998. Perfect. Watch our live stream unpack the latest Superman trailer. So they're still going. They're active. Very good. Anyway, so Sam Neill told JoeBlow.com, "I enjoyed making it. Joe Johnston was wonderful to work with. Alessandro, who plays my number 2 in the film, he and I got on really well. Bill Macy and Tia Leone didn't seem happy about making it, but I had a really good time. And I actually think it's a very undervalued film and really worth having a look at again. It finishes rather abruptly, but for all its difficulties, because it became inevitable that we would start shooting on the 1st of November or whatever it was, but they kept changing the script and we were flying by the seat of our pants a lot of the time. But for all of that, I think it works real good and there's some really fun stuff in it."
I think Sam Neill just had a good time and he's slightly clouded by that, but there we go.
Yeah. I look, bless him. I love Sam Neill. Crack on, Sam Neill. You're a legend. Hunt for the Wilder People is a masterpiece, and he's very good in that movie. Anyway, Johnston would later explain he considered leaving the project on a few occasions. He told IGN that making the film was a living hell on a daily basis. He would later elaborate on this at the New York Post, that shooting without a finished script was nerve-wracking, but it was also freeing up the whole creative process. We could literally decide on the day how we wanted a scene to progress. I'm not saying it's the way to make movies, but it does give you more freedom. He says the actors were all very flexible and that they dealt with the lack of the finished script the best they could, which is that's very classy. Well said. I like that. So yeah, as you can imagine, Chris, this movie's most of this movie's problems are not having a script locked down before they shot it. Yeah, dreadful idea. Shouldn't have done it. Should have held off the production. Delay the production. Delay it 3-4 months. Get your script in order. Then shoot. It's silly what they did. So yeah, the production followed the previous film's pattern of shooting in Hawaii, then in some of California's national parks, before moving to Universal Studios backlot. John Williams was originally contacted to do the music, but he was working on AI, artificial intelligence, with Spielberg. So they brought in Don Davis. Stan Winston, as we mentioned, did come back to do the puppetry and animatronics on set, while ILM supplied the CGI, just like in the original one. So the original script did indeed commit to Billy being killed, but the actor, Alexander Nivola, protested with the director, and that's what had him brought back, which is only possible in the circumstances in which the script isn't finished. That sort of thing. So maybe finish your script before so your actors can't complain about it. But I will say, this one I couldn't verify as a fact. This idea that he was the one that protested about his character's death and had him brought back. I couldn't verify that. I believe it. It makes sense because obviously in a world of like Jurassic Park, you're sort of thinking there'll be like 8 more sequels. Billy's coming back at some point. So, you don't want the movie to end with him dead, because then you're thinking that's no more paychecks for me. Maybe that's part of it. I'm speculating there, obviously. But yeah, I believe this story, even though I couldn't quite find a quote that backed it up. So now on to some general trivia before we wrap this up. When they enter the bar at the beginning to meet the Kirbys, there's a Jurassic Park pinball machine in the background, which I did like. That's funny. Apparently, the rights to use the footage from Barney and Friends cost the production $2,000, which is a lot of money for a very quick sight gag. I mean, I know in the grand scheme of this film's budget, it's a drop in the ocean, but that is still more money to spend on that joke, I think.
I did though. Oh, I'm really learning. The one big takeaway for me of this episode, this review, is that I'm a fucking idiot. Because when watching this film, I did go, literally went, Barney's a dinosaur too. Like, so,
Yeah. It got a cheap laugh out of me too. Very quickly as well, I should clarify that Trevor Morgan, who's the kid who plays Eric in this, he's the young kid. He's good in this, by the way. I always find it hard to like that kid when I see him and stuff, because he plays an absolute bastard in The Sixth Sense. Like, I've always hated this kid's face, because as a kid, when I watched The Sixth Sense, he made me so angry. He was such a jerk, like in that movie. So, like, whenever I see him in anything else, I'm always like, I just have an immediate dislike for you. Not his fault. Wonderful actor. Does a good job here. Very easy for a kid actor to be annoying. But he's good in this movie. But funnily enough, he actually was in the Barney the Dinosaur movie. So, a little bit of crossover there. Right, some dino shit. Got a few bits of dino information before we do the box office and move on with our lives from dinosaurs. Paleontologist Jack Horner authenticated the Spinosaurus' final design, although Winston's artist extrapolated on scientific reference, particularly in regard to his colouring. They also cheated a little bit on his height. He's actually slightly smaller than the T-Rex in real life, but they were like, well, look, they lived in different parts of the world and in different periods of time. These things would have never come into contact anyway. Who gives a shit? And they gave the Spinosaurus the little bit of extra height to sort of make him more imposing. I'm fine with that. I don't care. Oh, here it is. This is the piece of trivia I wanted to find earlier. So after the Spinosaurus attack on the airplane, Grant asks Billy how he would classify the animal. Billy's first inclination is to say it's a Suchomimus or a Baronex due to its large snout. This is an in-joke because many of the fans who saw the movie's logo had said the same thing. Many long pages on message boards of fans and the official page were dedicated to this debate about which dinosaur it was, and neither were right. So that was quite amusing for the crew, and because the movie was being written as it went, they were able to slip that line in. The vocalizations of the Spinosaurus were created by mixing together, and this is a new piece of just Jurassic Park specific. There's a new section of our trivia called "What Animals Made That Sound?" Because we've done this both weeks on the trot, so we'll complete it here. Spinosaurus was mixing together the low guttural sounds of a lion, an alligator, a bear cub crying, and the lengthened cry of a large bird, which gave roars of a raspy quality. So there you go. Let's see. Oh, in real life, the Spinosaurus is most likely a bit more like a crocodile, amphibious. Probably like sat in the water with its snout like that, and wouldn't have really come out of land on land. And if it had, it probably would have walked on all fours. So yeah, lots of inaccuracy there. But that discovery was made later, it must be said. So it's Dr. Nisbar Ibrahim and Paul Sereno, Dr. Paul Sereno, in 2014 made that sort of discovery. So, not the film's fault that it's that inaccurate. They tried to add feathers to the dinosaurs in this movie to represent, some of the more recent paleological finds. I don't care about this too much, but like they added, you notice that there's some feathers on the raptors' heads, Chris, in this movie? Do you notice that?
No, of course I didn't. I think if we've established anything, it's that I'm like dinosaurs. Yeah, okay.
yeah. There's a dinosaur with a feather on its head. That's fine. The Velociraptor resonating chamber that Billy shows Dr. Grant is actually a dog's resonating chamber increased to the size to fit a raptor's head. Sure. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
cool.
Makes sense. Let's do some box office very quickly, and then we'll do some things existing. This is another drop in profit, but still a profitable movie. So it's a $93 million budget. So this movie ended up costing a fair bit more than the last two. I think the last two were 63 and like 72, and this is 93. Although you could account for that with the 18 million spent on pre-production that maybe shouldn't have been spent. But the movie returned $369. So yeah, if you're doubling the budget, it's like profitable, but not by a lot. So. Yeah, there you go.
That's still not bad, though.
No, not bad.
You can see why.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, you can see why you could also see why this is the last one for a while. There's a bit of a gap here.
Yeah. That all makes sense.
Yeah, because it's like if it's diminishing returns, you definitely can't let it diminish below this point. This is pretty much just like the bottom of your expectations, I'd say. So it's time for Cars Exist. No. But it's also there's several things exist this week, so I'm going to flick through these really quickly. The car Alan drives is a 1989 Ford F350. Chris, keep up. It's time for Guns Exist. Oh, that was good. Pew, pew, pew. I liked your noise better, though. That was good. The Einhorn 20mm large weapon used by the mercenaries in this was actually a Beretta M82A2 bullpup sniper rifle, as we both know, because we know about guns. And it was developed for the US military, but never adopted. So there you go. It's time for Planes Exist, Chris. The twin engine airplane, that was good, that takes them to the island is a Hawk Beechcraft King Air 200. And also, Chris, helicopters exist. This is just an excuse for us
your
to do
noise
noises.
was better there.
Did I win that one?
Your
Okay, there
better.
you go. I'll take one in a while. That's fine. The helicopter that Grant, Billy, and the Kirbys leave the island on is called a Sikorsky SH-60B Seahawk aircraft, which, of course, we both knew. Satellite phones exist. Let's do like a little ringtone.
Yeah, I didn't know what. I panicked there. Say it again.
Satellite phones exist.
Yeah, you're right. That is the only way to do it.
Paul Kirby's satellite phone is based on a Globestar Sat 550. Look, lots of things exist, and I got to do my favourite joke, which is saying the complicated name of a thing and then being like, as Chris and I knew. So everyone wins. Right. Let's do a Jerry's final thought. Let's summarise. We're over 2 hours at this point, so let's wrap this bad boy up. Look, it doesn't make the stakes of the second movie. It makes all new ones. The plot is a bit more coherent and the characters and dialogue are more functional, but like ultimately it doesn't understand tension or how to create a scary or deadly situation. It doesn't know how to resolve it ever. So there's often like weird contrivances and ridiculous circumstances, and the ending is absolute crap. But the ending is also absolute crap on the last one. I think I'm leaning to The Lost World being better on the grounds that the thing I'm looking for in a Jurassic Park movie, at the very least, is the set pieces and the drama and the tension working. If the characters don't quite work, at least I've still got the thing I bought a ticket for. Which is true of The Lost World, because I still get the exciting scene in the RV, and there's a couple of other sequences. It's a bit quick, but the raptors in the tall grass is kind of cool. There's multiple sequences in the previous movie that we enjoyed. This movie, when it doesn't achieve any of that, you just sort of go, well, then what was the point of the journey if we didn't at least achieve tension with our dino action? So I think if it's failing that fundamentally, to me, that equates more to like a comedy not being funny, which is that's a crime, because it's like, That's like a movie crime, because it's like, well, you've completely failed there. Like, you've not done the thing you set out to do. If you'd have asked the directors and the writers of this movie what they were setting out to do, I imagine dinosaur action and tension was a part of it, and they massively failed. So I think on that balance, on weighting that issue as more important than the other issue, I think I'm leaning towards this one, which is surprising to me, because when I watched it, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to choose. But yeah, because I think the first one, the character stuff that I don't like, doesn't completely break the characters. So it's like, it's not even that much significantly worse. It's just that horrible fourth act thing is the real big issue. So yeah, I think it's this. I think this one's worse, but I still think it's better than its reputation.
Fair.
So there you go.
Yes, yeah, I think it is. I think that's the right phrasing. It's better than its reputation. I don't think it's underrated or anything like that, because it is a bad movie. But it is. I don't think it deserves what it gets, and it is considered the weakest. And I'd be intrigued to watch Fallen Kingdom and Dominion to see whether it's actually the weakest.
Yeah, I think Dominion's the real, like, I could maybe. Dominion's got a lot of problems, which is a shame, because it's the one that brings back a lot of the original cast. I think Fallen Kingdom is very flawed, but very much like The Lost World, it's a movie of two halves. And I think there's really good stuff in Fallen Kingdom, but they didn't commit to it fully, and that's kind of the problem. And it's got a lot of bullshit of like, we're off the island, we're on the island, we're doing this, we're doing that, and it's like a lot of like weird contrivances to create the scenarios, but the scenarios it contrives are then quite fun. So there's an element of like Fallen Kingdom. Actually, it's funny, that trilogy really does echo this trilogy, where the first one's pretty good, the second one is like flawed but still got some good stuff in it, and then the third one's a bit of a mess. So actually, maybe this new one, this not Angelina Jolie, who's also Scarlett Johansson one. Maybe the Scarlett Johansson one's going to be good. I doubt it. It looks terrible. The trailer did not excite me, but we'll see. I'm going to see it in the cinema either way, because I always do.
Fair enough. You committed, and that's a good thing.
Well, yeah, I've only missed one of these in the cinema, so I think that's.
What's that?
I think, I feel like that would be. It's like the big Star Wars movies. I'm going to see all of them in the cinema. I'm not going to not.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I don't think since the prequels, maybe. Did I see Rogue One in the cinema? I'm sure I did.
I did. Regretted my life choices. It's a bad movie.
Sure.
And I can I just say, I don't like this revisionist stuff now. Oh, I've just watched Andor and I've revisited Rogue One and it's so much better now. No, Andor's good, and it does help a lot with the biggest problem with that movie, which is that the characters don't work. It doesn't fix that movie. That movie's still deeply broken, but sure.
No, I also don't think any time something else retrospectively fixes something, I don't think that's right. I don't think that's, you're not fixing it. Like, do you know what I mean? A movie should exist on its own. You shouldn't need to create an entire other property to fix a movie.
Yeah. The movie shouldn't be only good now I've watched 12 plus hours of Andor.
Especially because if a movie's broken, I don't think it can be fixed. Like, even I'd go as far to say even a director's cut that's better. Well, that's a better version of the movie then, but it doesn't retrospectively fix the original movie, because you're seeing a different movie for it to be better. Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, the original movie's flaws are still its flaws. Yeah, I agreed. And funnily enough, the biggest issue with Rogue One is the character work. So, because all the characters are flat and like, they're thin as a pancake. Like there's nothing to them, and therefore I find it hard to invest in their ultimate fate, because I don't care about any of them. And yeah, sure, giving me a whole TV series that invests me in one of that cast will help, I guess, with that problem to some degree. But I'm not convinced that when I switch on, because I'm working my way through Andor at the moment, the second season. When I finish Andor second season, I'm probably going to sit through Rogue One again. And I reckon I'm going to be annoyed and frustrated, because obviously I know that Andor leads right into Rogue One. I suspect that I'm even going to be annoyed that Andor acts differently to the way he did in the series. Yeah, that's fair. Although we'll see. That's a speculative problem based on vague memories of that movie. But anyway, we'll see. Although I did see a lot of people going, "Oh, will there be a season 3 of Andor?" And people just being like, "Yeah, it's called Rogue One."
To be fair, I did see like the superior version of that joke was I saw someone say George Lucas announced to direct sequel to Andor. It's called Star Wars Episode 1: A New Hope, and it comes out in May 1977.
It would be such an interesting thought experiment, wouldn't it, to watch them all one after the other? So Andor Series 1, Andor Series 2, Rogue One, A New Hope.
Yeah, it'd be a pretty interesting experience for sure. Especially because New Hope then really does, because a lot of Andor has been about the Empire building their Death Star, which obviously is. Although I think it would feel cheap. You'd be like, wait, I just watched all this footage of this guy fighting against the Empire just for this random farm kid to come in and fucking blow up the Death Star. That sucks.
Yes, but because the guy put the flaw there so that it could be easily abused in Rogue One.
Yeah, and Andor fought to get that information to the rebellion. He died for that. So it's still his victory, morally speaking. Anyway, well, enough about Star Wars. Look, I think this is it's a better movie than its reputation. I'm glad we got to see it, but there it is. So the question now becomes, Chris, why next? It's your choice.
Yeah. Well, listen, I couldn't choose between. I had it down to 3, and I couldn't choose between.
Are we doing the wheel again?
You what? Sorry. No. I'm not using the wheel. And I think you'd have been happy with any one of the choices. So the two of them I haven't seen. I was tempted to choose a movie I hadn't seen.
Oh wow!
So one was Galaxy Quest, one was Planes, Trains, and Automobiles,
yes.
and one was Mrs. Doubtfire. So I was. I think. Am I fair to say you'd have been happy with all of them?
Yeah, absolutely. Galaxy Quest is a great movie, and I think you would have really enjoyed Galaxy Quest. I suspect from the way you phrased it, you didn't land on Galaxy Quest.
No, well, I'm really sorry, Dan, because I think you'd have been happy with any of those choices. But I'm sorry, categorically, there is only one way and one choice that I can now pick, and that is obviously Meet the Parents. Let's find out what inspired Jurassic Park 3.
Well, uncredited.
Uncredited, I know. Uncredited, I know.
You know what's funny? When I read that that it was uncredited work that they'd done on Meet the Parents, I then went to the Meet the Parents wiki and Control F for the names of those two writers. Those two writers' names do not appear anywhere on that Wikipedia. So there's not even a section called writing, and it where it says reportedly Alexander Payne and Taylor did an uncredited draft of this script. Jim Taylor, sorry. Not mentioned at all. Doesn't come up.
Well, it'll be fascinating to see if in the triv for this movie is they did uncredited work and it led to them getting Jurassic Park 3.
Well, if it isn't, I'm adding that.
Meet the Parents.
Holy shit. Oh, that's so funny. That's a real... that was a real, that was a real, side swipe there. That was very good. Good work. Oh, God, we're watching Meet the Parents. There you go, everyone. I mean, look, I'll be honest with you. To be fair, it's a film that was going to come up at some point, for sure. And also, I will say, what a great, antithesis to this movie.
Yeah, and also I think, look, it's very clear. I do apologise in a way, because it's very clear that my thinking was a light, fun movie that was definitely good. That's clearly what my 3 choices were about. And I'm not sure there's any certainty that Meet the Parents will fall into that category, and we might end up doing another bad movie. But that could be
we
fun,
might end up doing
maybe.
another 2 bad movies, Chris, because if we do another sequel season, what you've just done is put Meet the Fockers in the pile.
I know my memory for sure is that there's no debate in here, like Jurassic Park, there's no debating here that Meet the Parents is far superior to its sequels, because my memory is that Meet the Fockers and Little Fockers are not good movies.
I'd forgotten Little Fockers existed.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Jesus. Well, there you go. Well, so there you go, everyone. Meet the Parents. Oh, what if I hadn't included that trivia? It'd be a different timeline, that's for sure.
I think it would have been Galaxy Quest, to be honest with you, because my temptation was to make. I couldn't find a third. I didn't. My original idea was pick 3 movies I'd be up for seeing that I hadn't seen and get you to pick, but I didn't know if you'd seen Plane, Trains, and Automobiles.
Yes, yeah.
But also. The reality is I couldn't find an option. I couldn't find a third option. I also couldn't find, and I wasn't sure about Planes, Trains. But I was also just looking at it going, well, I might as well just pick Galaxy Quest because that's the movie Dan's going to choose. Like, I knew if Galaxy Quest was in the... Because, like, I thought about... I haven't seen Happy Gilmore, for example, and I thought about putting that in, but I just kept coming back to, but what's the point? Dan's going to choose Galaxy Quest.
Yeah, I mean, Mrs. Doubtfire would have been a tempting second choice.
Well, I've seen Mrs. Doubtfire, so in the end, it just I let go of that. I let go of that thought because I was like, well, there's no scenario where Dan's not choosing Galaxy Quest. So Mrs. Doubtfire was my own sort of, well, maybe I choose that instead. Yeah, and then the Meet the Parents thing happened, and I was like, oh no, fuck it, that's chosen that.
Very good. Well, look, I I'm happy with the choice. It's one we were going to get to regardless, so it's like let's stick it in there. Let's do Meet the Parents. Let's look at the uncredited work of the co-writers of Jurassic Park 3. We decided not to have Alan Grant go down with the ship.
Oh, that's exciting.
That is exciting. I'm on board with this direction. Man, that's very funny though. I'm gonna have to write that down. Here we go. Because I'm gonna forget what movie we're doing. Those are the kind of movies that like. So when we're doing a big tentpole, I always remember. I'm like, oh yeah, we're doing Jurassic Park, but like Johnny English, Hercules. Like I remember we're sitting down and we'll be like, I'm watching the movie for this week's podcast. What is it again? Like that's.
Yeah. There's a very real danger we'll come to review this movie and we'll both have accidentally watched Galaxy Quest.
Yeah. Anyway, look, dear listener, thank you very much. We love you a lot. We're happy. We're excited to do it. We enjoy doing this podcast. It's one of my favorite things we do. Based on the numbers, we would have cancelled this podcast years ago, but we enjoy doing it very much. So we're going to keep forcing ourselves to watch dumb movies from our past. So there you go. Meet the Parents next week. You can get us on the usual places. If you have thoughts on this, mail at nothingbutstatic.co.uk. If you'd like to support what we do, there are a few different ways to do it. The most obvious and the easiest is just to keep listening. We appreciate that very much. If you want to get one tier up from that, you can tell a friend, or one tier up from that, you can interact with our podcast on whatever platform you listen to it on. So if you listen to this through the posts we do on YouTube, or if you listen to it through Spotify or Overcast, if you like or comment or review or heart, whatever the format is, the podcast, it tells that app you use, that format you use, that platform you use to share it with others and makes it more likely to be shared. So we appreciate that too. Of course, if you want to go a step above that, you can do so. You can help us financially. That also helps pay the bills around here, which is our Patreon, patreon.com/nothingbutstatic, where you can, for as little as $1 a month, get access to our discussion of Meet the Parents right now, because we post episodes of this podcast a week early over on Rewind Reviews on our Patreon, sorry, and that'll also be true of when we finally come back, probably for Avatar in whatever format that takes. There's rumors about when that happens and keeps getting pushed back, and I'm seeing 2026, so who knows? But yeah, when Avatar's back, coverage of that will definitely get posted on the Patreon earlier, and it gives you access to our Discord where you can send us your thoughts. So I think that covers everything. But yeah, whatever way you wish to continue to support us is amazing, and we appreciate it. So there we go. I think that's everything. I'm going to hand over to Chris because he ends this thing.
My name's Chris Billingham.
And my name's Dan Bean.
And this review has been rewound.